across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's just gone 7 o'clock. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell and it's the Evening Exchange. I am really concerned about another police screw-up, this time by Greater Manchester Police, that could potentially have meant that the two Jewish people who were killed in the Heaton Park synagogue attack could still be with us now. In fact, the whole attack, in theory, could have been prevented because the man who carried it out, well, the police had his phone twice, or two of his phones. If they'd looked into those phones, they would have seen things like WhatsApp groups where he talked about hating Jews and saying they should die. It is another police screw-up. The Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable Sir Stephen Watson has apologised. We have established this evening that the officer who failed to look into those phones is not suspended or restricted because of the potential misconduct investigation, not a gross misconduct investigation. And we know that the Independent Office of Police Conduct are looking into this as well. It's a scandal. It's really worrying. It shows yet again what is the point of taking phones off people if you don't actually look into what is in those phones, and can you prevent further jihadi attacks? That is the question. What about the other 11 people, 10 or 11 people on those WhatsApp groups? Are they being investigated? That's what I want to know. A Labour MP demands an apology after Reform UK shares a misleading audio clip. That's what she says. We played it last night. We'll hear more on that as this goes on. Reform UK and the doghouse, Robert Jenrick on that one. Spelling tests are draconian. Should kids have spelling tests? I would say that seems to be a pretty fundamental part of learning how to, I don't know, read, write and, yeah, spell. Also, Gary Lineker wants to pay more tax. Fine, go ahead and do it. Don't tell us about it. Just do it on HMRC's website. You can send through as much as you want, Gary, and stop telling us about it. We'll debate that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, you can send me a WhatsApp voice note, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. We'll also talk about the politics of the day, because Kemi Badenoch has been criticising Andy Burnham. His big idea today is to give a 20% rate relief cut to pubs. Now, pubs have been through an awful lot in the last 6 years particularly. It costs 60% more to run a pub now than it did in 2020. Let's see what the Prime Minister's been saying today.
Last year, I announced Conservatives would abolish business rates. Abolish business rates for most of the high street, not just pubs, but shops, restaurants, retail, hospitality, leisure. And more importantly, I showed how I would pay for it. Our new Prime Minister only wants to cut business rates by 20%, and only for clubs, pubs and music venues. And he hasn't even found the money to pay for it.
Let's see what the Prime Minister has been saying.
This is a first step today, but it's an important step. I made this commitment in the Makerfield by-election because we're losing pubs. Pubs need to know that, the cavalry is coming. This is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. It could make the difference for a number of venues that are struggling, and it was right to confirm it quickly.
And maybe some of the missing money when those rates are cut could come from millionaires like Gary Lineker.
Economically, what can you do differently? A wealth tax, possibly, of the super rich, which is what a lot of people, economists, are calling for?
If you want to pay more money, just pay the money. Don't tell us about it, Gary. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We'll also talk, as I say, about Robert Jenrick and the fact that he put out what the new immigration minister is saying is a misleading clip. We'll talk about that later on. But the big story today, and the one I am honestly most concerned about in our society, is the police chief who says he's deeply sorry over missed opportunities to potentially uncover a plot to attack that synagogue, Heaton Park, in Manchester. That was late last year. Jihad al-Shami, who was 35, was shot dead by by police on the 2nd of October while he carried out his terrorist attack at the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue, in which 2 worshippers were killed. Police had already seized his mobile phone containing details of his extremist mindset and terror fixation, but did not analyse the contents of those phones until after the attack. So they had evidence against him, they had his intent, they knew what he was about, but they didn't look at the phone. All of this has come out today because a friend of his has been jailed, Mohammed Bashir. He was sentenced to life imprisonment at Manchester Crown Court for planning a separate attack with Jihad al-Shami, with the Heaton Park attacker, on the UK Defence Academy at Trivenham. So there are 2 separate attacks. Because of the second attack, the separate attack, we now know the details of Jihad al-Shami, who was the scumbag who attacked Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation. Sir Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, said the conclusion of legal proceedings against Bashir means that the rules which prevent the sharing of information about live criminal cases are now lifted. Therefore, today marks the first possible opportunity for me to provide additional information as to the nature of the contact had with al-Shami, that's the Heaton Park attacker, prior to his cowardly attack upon those attending a synagogue. It is factually the case al-Shami had come to the notice of GMP in respect of 2 linked criminal allegations which did not relate to terror offences. These allegations resulted in his being arrested twice on 2 separate things, including on suspicion of rape. At the time of his committing the attack, he was on police bail. In conducting an internal review, it became apparent Greater Manchester Police had seized Jihad al-Shami's mobile devices at the point of each arrest. But the significance of the data contents of these devices was substantial in respect of evidencing an extremist mindset. So they could have learned a huge amount about what he was doing, about what he was up to, about what he was thinking, and potentially what he was planning. Now, Stephen Watson, who's the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, says, regrettably, I can confirm that the significance of the information stored on al-Shami's devices was not realised, as they had not been examined before the attack took place on the 2nd of October. There can, however, be little doubt that the information contained within these devices would have inspired further investigative action. He said it constituted a missed opportunity and apologised. Now, the Independent Office of Police Conduct is looking into this. We asked Greater Manchester Police further questions about this, particularly in regard to the officer or officers that did not look into those phones, that had the phones of the Heaton Park attacker and didn't examine them, didn't go into detail, didn't look to see what was in them, to know what was there. And there was a lot of stuff on there that could have been very, very helpful in knowing his mindset and possibly what he was planning. The officer involved, we've established tonight, is not suspended or restricted because it's a potential misconduct investigation, not a gross misconduct. And that's per police regulations. So the Independent Office of Police Conduct are looking into this. Some of the detail in this is astonishing, especially when you consider the 2 people died, Melvin Kravitz and Adrian Dolby. The IOPC says it'll investigate all aspects of the attack. Al-Shami was on bail, remember, in October 2025. Let's speak to Kevin Hurley. He's a former Metropolitan Police Superintendent. Kevin, the Jewish community leaders in Manchester have said that they have faith in Sir Stephen Watson as the Chief of Police in Manchester. Should they have that faith, given that a major opportunity for an investigation that could, in theory, have prevented this attack has been missed?
Well, you need to ask them that. But bottom line is, Chief Constable Watson is one of the most successful Chief Constables in the country. He appears to have turned round the performance of Greater Manchester Police in the couple of years he's been in charge, and is known for a robust approach to policing.
It wasn't robust enough in this case, was it? It wasn't robust enough in this case.
Say again?
It wasn't robust enough in this case. If there was a robust investigation...
I'm just responding to your question about should you have faith in him. Bottom line is he's done a very good job up there, and he's tipped as a potential successor to be Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. Turning to this incident, of course, on the surface, it's appalling. The thought that police had a couple of phones with all that information on it, and it indicates to me either individual slackness by the officer who had them or systemic failure. The issue on it is, Peter, he was, from what we know, he was arrested on an allegation of rape, and a separate matter which we don't know, but not terrorism related. So although you might take people's phones when you're starting to conduct an investigation, there won't necessarily be the same amount of urgency at downloading and examining those phones that you would have with a terrorist event. And one of the problems is, of course, that the officers who would deal with assault or rape allegations are generally very understaffed and are struggling with a load of cases. So I can understand why it's happened, and equally it's very disappointing that it has. But what this is all part of the systemic failure that we see continually happening across the police, which didn't occur at this once many years ago, and it's actually a result of the cuts by the Tory party back in 2010, where they cut 42,000 people off the workforce, and then the police have steadily been trying to recover from that. At the same time, put it in perspective, the Boris recruitment wave produced 20,000 new recruits. In that time, 24,000 people have hemorrhaged out the door, leaving early. So we're in real trouble with our police in terms of retaining them. And then secondly, in the level of training that's provided, because one of the casualties of all the cuts in the last 10 years was most of the training schools were cut right back, detective training schools closed, senior leadership training schools, police staff college at Bramshill closed. When you do that to an organisation, you effectively take out the rib cage and the spinal cord that holds it up.
Should the
I'm
officer...
not defending it in any way, but what I'm saying, this is... We've got a desperate systemic failure that's ongoing in the police, and it needs significant reinvestment and a number of years.
Okay. Should the officer who dealt with that phone still be on duty right now? Because we've established that he or she is on duty right now, or is doing shifts right now, because they haven't been suspended.
Unless he or she has done something that indicates criminal conduct or willful misconduct, there's no reason why you should take them off duty. It may well be that they're simply overwhelmed with lots of other cases. And let's cut back to the chase. If that person is dealing with a number of rape cases, the very last thing those survivors of those attacks will want is the officer pulled away, who they may have built a rapport with, and those victims are not getting the treatment they need. So, you know, let's just wind back this sense of anger and sense of stress and think, what are we seeking to achieve here?
Well, I think, Kevin, I think what we're seeking to achieve is a police force that does its job and a police force that prevents attacks. In messages to Jihad al-Shami, Bashir stated virulent anti-Semitic opinions. He complained his posts to a WhatsApp group about martyrdom were being deleted. He was made part of a WhatsApp group run by Jihad al-Shami, along with 11 other members, to which he sent more than 2,000 messages. They included exalting martyrdom, posting messages about exterminating Jewish men and taking Jewish women as concubines. He also rejoiced at watching videos of Syrian soldiers being beheaded. Surely the police should have picked that up.
Well, if in a perfect world, people had thought, oh, this man may be a terrorist, let's send these phones to the North West Counter-Terrorist Police Unit, which has got huge resources, it would have been picked up. But what I'm reading between the lines here is this will be a Manchester rape investigation unit that will be overwhelmed and understaffed, and their first priority is always going to be care of the victim, preserving forensic evidence, and in much slower time they'll start to examine the phones if they think that's relevant. So, Peter, I hate to disappoint people, but that's how these things work in the real world.
No, it's not disappointing. It's very useful to get your insight, Kevin, as always. Kevin Hurley there, former Metropolitan Police Superintendent. Thanks for joining us. Nicole Lampert, the journalist and broadcaster, is with us. Nicole, would you be so happy, or not, maybe not happy, but would you be so generous to the police in terms of this? Because Kevin perhaps is just talking about the reality that the police don't have the resources to do this. But when you see some of the evidence that has now come to light, it does strike me as if Greater Manchester Police failed here. The Chief Constable has apologised as a result. There's an IOPC investigation. Surely those families and victims of Heaton Park won't be happy, although we do know, and it is worth pointing out because of balance, that there is a community leader, a very senior community leader actually, Mark Levy, who's the Chief Executive of the Jewish Representative Council, who said while the news would be a disappointment to the affected families, he backed Watson as a wonderful friend to Jewish people in Manchester. What do you make of it?
I think there's kind of two things. So the first is the police obviously just didn't do their job in terms of looking at the phone, and you would hope that they would do that for a rape investigation on its own. And secondly, well, maybe there's three things, but the second point is, even if they had seen those, they might have seen, oh, it's an extremist, but there are tens of thousands of extremists. We know a few years ago they were looking at 40,000. So was this rhetoric enough to perhaps have been kept an eye on, in that, you know, we have had many terrorist attacks, and these were people on the police radar, and they still weren't caught in time. And I'm thinking about Southport in particular. So I think there is that element too. And then there's the fact that, do they take extremism, anti-Semitic extremism, seriously enough? And we've seen that, for example, in 2021, when a load of men came from Bradford and were going around the streets of North London for 2.5 hours with loudspeakers saying we're going to rape Jewish women. And the police knew who they were, and the CPS didn't pursue it. So there's kind of three things here. None of this will make Melvin or Adrian come back to their lives. It won't make the people of the Manchester Jewish community feel any safer. I think it is worth also pointing out that soon after that terrorist attack, there was, in the court case, Manchester Police did an excellent job in stopping another terrorist attack against the Jewish community. And I think probably the Manchester Jewish community, they know that they rely on their police a lot to protect us at our schools, at our synagogues, and all of that too. So there's much in play, I would say, rather than, yes, it's a scandal, but I partly do agree that basically the police do not have enough resources to cover the huge amount of problems we have in our country.
It does worry me that there is a WhatsApp group run by Jihad al-Shami with 11 other members, to which he sent over 2,000 messages talking about exalting martyrdom, talking about exterminating Jewish men and taking Jewish women as concubines, rejoicing watching videos of Syrian soldiers being beheaded, and that's not picked up. I would wonder, I'm not talking about a police officer going through every single message, of which there are thousands in most people's phones, tens of thousands perhaps, but surely there is some technology, surely there is some AI that could actually look through this and look for words, look for phrases, even if it is a rape investigation for which he was on police bail. I just think that the families in particular and the community more widely must be really, really saddened by this, by the missed opportunity here.
I think that probably everyone is saddened, and because it brings back an awful time, and it still is an awful time, and that sort of thing. We know that there are many, many threats against us. I do, listening to what the former superintendent said, I totally understand that. Would a rape investigation team, I mean, they should have looked at the phone, but would they have picked up what was possibly in Arabic? And would they think to pass it on? And even if it had been passed on, would it be deemed extremist enough, when we know that some of the stuff even being said in our mosques is really extreme against Jewish people, and nothing happens? So that to me is kind of the bigger concern. So two concerns really, that this someone who was accused of a serious crime, rape is a serious crime, and it's a crime that the police really struggle to get any convictions for. Why wasn't his phone looked at properly? And then secondly, even if it had been, and even if they had seen all of these messages, would it have done anything? Would it have stopped anything? And that's the tragedy of where we are with extremism in this country.
There's so much of it, and actually getting to the bottom of what constitutes people who are just being idiots and being hateful idiots versus people who are actually going to attack people is a precise science and art, probably, rather than a science. Nicole, thank you. Appreciate that. That's Nicole Lampert there, the journalist and broadcaster. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Dawn and Chelmsford, who says, Peter, the Manchester police fiasco is sadly now commonplace in our public services. The police, social services, health, etc., all seem to miss opportunities to prevent terrible incidents. Thank you, Dawn, for that. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi, Cardi P. Hi, Joanna. I am so angry over this. They had his phone in conjunction with a rape case. Why wasn't it looked at immediately? Because they often film their rapes and then would have found the rest, says Joanna. Dee in Chesterfield says, the policies of the police service seem to show that they are afraid of militant Muslims. When offenders are clearly anti-Semitic, the police turn a blind eye and appear to sacrifice the safety of our British Jews, says Dee in Chesterfield. And Gary Lineker, Margaret in Birmingham, says, Gary Lineker, where do we start? gets an interview with Andy Burnham, now coming up with tax ideas. Do you think Gary wants to be a spad, says Margaret in Birmingham? Well, there have been worse people than Gary Lineker, let me tell you. Alex says, if I wanted to know something about football, then Gary Lineker is perfect. Leave government policy to someone who knows something about economics, and political party to the experts, and has suggested a couple, including a couple of presenters at the station. Fran says, from West Sussex, regarding millionaires wanting to pay more tax, give the people in the department responsibility for voluntary tax contributions, the list of the 120 millionaires. Call each one of them and ask them how much they want to contribute, and controversially, bonus the civil servant who gets the most out of them. Far less expensive, and see who puts their money where their mouth is. Would be brilliant to see the results published. Fran, I completely agree with you. We'll go to the debate desk in just a second. Lewis Oakley and Linda Jubilee will be with me. I want your views on all of what we've talked about so far on this fiasco with Greater Manchester Police. Or should we actually, as Kevin Hurley says, just say this is probably a result of underfunding of police, of mismanagement, and the fact that there are just so many times when the police are lacking resources. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Grant in Leicestershire, who says people the police being short of resources, they've spare people to dance the Macarena at Pride. Very good point. Penny in Essex says, good evening, Peter. I think that to be Jewish must be terrifying. Jewish people have been absolutely terrorised from the beginning of time. It has to be stopped, but how? Says Penny in Essex. John says, Ian, the man from Blackburn, I'm proudly wearing my I Stand With British Jews badge today. And the details after today's court hearing show exactly why we need to stand in solidarity with the British Jewish community. Wendy says, I've not had any police training and I'm not Miss Marple, but his name is Jihad. I'm guessing that might make people want to investigate his phone if he's been arrested for another crime. Amanda says, hi Peter, the trouble with the likes of Gary Lineker, who come from humble beginnings and make a lot of money in later life, is that when they have some sort of guilt complex, this appears when they start their virtue signalling by wanting to pay higher taxes, says Amanda. Listen, Amanda, I'm with you, but if Gary Lineker wants to pay £1 million in taxes, if he wants to say, right, you know, I've got a spare £1 million, I'm going to give it to HMRC, off you go. Don't let me stop you, Gary. Get on the website, enter your bank details, do it. No problem. Don't get the government to legislate. That takes time, that takes money, that takes resources, that takes time the government needs to sort out many, many other things. If you want to give more money, off you go. Write a cheque. Or do it electronically online. I want to talk about something we covered last night. Robert Jenrick has been accused of spreading a doctored small boat recording of a Labour MP. This is the new MP who is, well, she's not a new MP, but she is the new Immigration Minister, Jo White, the Bassetlaw MP. It appears to suggest she told constituents last year, I don't care if we stop the boats. We played this last night, having spotted it on Mr Jenrick's Twitter. The tweet is now down. Let's just have a look at what the recording said.
Right, Rob, people are saying that you doctored that so that you...
No, I just want to actually look at what Jo White said, the Bassetlaw MP, Jo White. So this is a recording of a meeting, a council meeting that she was at, and this was what Robert Jenrick put out and what he put on his social media when she was appointed Immigration Minister. So this is the actual words that she said, and then I'll show you an interview that Jeremy Kyle did with Robert Jenrick earlier today. So let's just see what Jo White said.
I don't care who it's talking about. My priority. My priority. Yes, okay.
So she has said on social media, Robert Jenrick is spreading a false account of what I said at a meeting with my constituents last year. This recording proves what I said. Reform have deliberately twisted my words to mislead the public. They should withdraw their false claim and immediately apologise. Well, Jeremy tackled Robert Jenrick on this morning. This is how that played out.
Right, Rob, people are saying that you doctored that so that you could just have her saying, I don't care, but in that you can hear a bit like Trump and the BBC that she said the opposite. What's your take? Help me out.
Well, it's very confused, to be perfectly honest. A group of locals who were at the meeting, or knew people who were at the meeting, sent me a recording, because my constituency is actually next to Joe's in North Nottinghamshire, and she appears to say with one breath that she wants to stop the boats, then with the next breath, I don't care about stopping the boats. So I made the, well, I thought, perfectly reasonable point of putting that out into the public domain and asking her to explain what is her actual position. Now, she says that the recording isn't quite right, and that if you have a better quality recording, she's saying something different. So look, I am a fair-minded person. I said late last night, you know what, I'll delete this. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt, and let's see what she actually does.
Did you make a mistake in putting it out in the first place?
No, I don't think so. But look, I am prepared to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't know exactly what happened at this meeting because I wasn't there. It's obvious that recollections vary because...
God, you sound like the royal family. That's what the Queen said.
Some of the folks who were there left thinking that she was weak on this issue. She says that she wasn't. In fact, she's very tough. We'll have to see.
She published the full audio in which she said, I don't care who will stop the boats, but my number one priority is to stop those boats.
Well, let's see.
Linda Jubilee is with me on the debate desk, as is Lewis Oakley, broadcasters and commentators, and in Lewis's case, a podcast host. Great to have you on the debate desk. How are you doing? This is Linda's first time on the debate desk. Linda, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, it's all very well for Robert Jenrick to say, well, let's wait and see, or let's give it some time. It's perfectly clear to me what happened. She said she doesn't care who will stop the boats, just that the boats are stopped. Now, we're all perfectly clear on that. But Robert Jenrick, with a nifty bit of footwork, has managed to make himself almost the hero, the star of that little bit of narrative there. Like, he wants to be fair-minded. He wants to be this, that or the other that supports his case. The fact of the matter is this irresponsible posting of these kind of comments has to stop. You remember the Trump one? I think you mentioned it earlier. That's when the Trump speech was deliberately edited to say one thing.
The doctoring by the BBC.
Else.
Yeah.
It's called a Frankenstein edit. That's the same as a newspaper journalist telescoping quotes, which removes the context of what's going on. The fact of the matter is that Robert Jenrick should not have posted this. other MPs who are too trigger-happy posting things. They shouldn't be posting things they haven't checked. There's a reason why newspapers and other conventional print publications have sub-editors and lawyers and various checks to make sure that accurate stuff gets posted. And I think MPs are almost the worst culprits of posting this kind of thing when they don't really know what has happened.
So the interesting thing is Robert Jenrick posted it. I saw it. I was sent it. I then contacted Robert Jenrick and said, is this genuine? Where is it from? We're about to play it out on our station. He said, yeah, it's all fine. It's all totally genuine. Play it out. We've seen what he has said there. I'm not accusing Mr. Jenrick of any bad faith necessarily, but I would ask him, and maybe Jeremy did another part of the interview that we haven't shown, but why did you delete it? If it was,
why did he do a U-turn? It sounds to me like he did a U-turn.
If you posted it and then deleted it, there has to be a reason for that. Lewis, what's your perspective on this?
I think everything you said is actually correct, I think. We've got to have good standards for our politicians. That said, if someone sends you something and you think that it is legitimate and you choose to put it out, I actually think that that's fine, as long as when it is then revealed this is not exactly how this went, you then do apologise. And I think that that's what we're missing from him, is him saying, rather than just deleting a tweet, anyone can delete a tweet, is saying, look, I thought it was
what's
right.
wrong with checking it? What's wrong with checking it before you post it?
Well, maybe he should, and maybe that's... But this is the thing, how much do we want to regulate everything? Has every politician got to check everything before they upload? I mean,
it's not really a question of regulating
Hold on a second. If Robert Jenrick genuinely believed that to be true and trusted the source of that, it had been on the Guido Fawkes website previously. If he, we were looking into it, we played it out, we said to people, what do you think it says? We read out various tweets, including from a journalist called Noah Hoffman at The Spectator, not exactly Labour's greatest friend, who said this is nonsense. Joe White responded to it as well, and we read that out. I think we gave last night probably the full context.
But that's not a defence in law. If you post something,
if
you post something, even in good faith, because you believe it to be true, it wouldn't stop a libel action. It doesn't. There's only 3 defences to libel. That's justification, fair comment, and privilege, and it's none of those.
2 things I would say on this, though. Number
I don't think it's going to be a libel case, but that's a fair point.
You see see my point.
I see exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
I will say, look, we've got to get better at apologising as politicians. We're still waiting. I mean, it's interesting. A Labour MP has demanded an apology for something that was put out incorrect, but it was it last week or the week before? We had Shabana Mahmood, Andy Burnham, and I forgot his name. That was the Prime Minister, saying that there was a far-right terror attack that then turned out to not be. We haven't had any follow-up from them of actually we put out incorrect information. So I do think that when the shoe's on the other foot, where is the apology? So I think we need better standards overall.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, you really shouldn't make the mistake in the first place. You should be very responsible about checking what you do. But actually, afterwards, you're quite right. You do need to properly apologise, and that doesn't happen either.
So the point is, I'm not saying I'm Mother Teresa here, but the point is that this... Clearly, there is at least a debate about this. I don't think... I think she's right. I'm on Joe White's side of this, and this is rare for me to be on a Labour MP side, but it seems to be the case. And we're in a position where Robert Jenrick took it down, but the question is, why have you taken it down? And I don't think that's really been answered. Yuil in Ballymena has been in touch and says Robert Jenrick should do the right thing and apologise to Joe White now, which is an interesting perspective on all of this. Similarly, on the we're going to talk in just a second about Manchester and the case there and what the police did or didn't do. Mary in County Down has been in touch and says there's a high chance the 2 men who died in the Manchester synagogue attack would be alive if police had bothered to do their job. It's so outrageous. An apology from the Chief Constable won't cut it. The officers who failed to act are surely suspended and on track to be sacked. If not, why not? Well, they're not, Mary. We've been in touch with the Greater Manchester Police and the officers are not suspended. Mary continues, the Jews and those who support them have no confidence in the police or politicians to protect them. Today's revelation proves why. We'll talk more about that with Linda and indeed with Lewis in just a second. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's interesting in the break, not to reveal any private conversations, but Linda and Lewis have still been talking about this big issue of the clip that Robert Jenrick posted. Linda, just give us a flavour. You clearly have more to say on this, and I don't want to stop you. This is what the debate desk is all about.
It's incredibly important when you are, you know, and Lewis here is much more in comms than I am, but when you want to build trust and you want to have the right perception, you cannot afford to do these mealy-mouthed, woolly, imprecise things. You've got to check material. I mentioned to you the famous quote from Nietzsche, who said, "If you lie to me, that's one thing, but I won't believe you in future." And that's the real damage. When you start deluding people, it might not be a straightforward lie. You might be lying by omission. You might just be, you know, ducking and diving. But the public lose trust in people when they behave that way. That's the problem.
Final thought from Lewis on this.
Look, I think that the British public is smart, and we know when some things are out of context, and I think that we're getting more and more used to, oh, well, we didn't really see what happened before that video started. So I think it's just the world we live in, but I would like to see more apologies from politicians, and I think as much as Robert Jenrick is so clearly being pulled up on this now, and I'm not defending the man, we're really not pulling up the politicians that said that there was a far-right terror attack that then turned out not to be. Can we trust their Twitter accounts anymore?
We should be pulling them all up. They all need to speak much more clearly and get their message out much more clearly. And then, if there is a problem, they need to properly apologise. End of.
Apologies when things go wrong. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes it's not. This is I think Joe White will continue and will be fine, and I think the world will continue to turn and there won't be a big deal. What I'm much more concerned about when it comes to an apology that was issued today was about the Heaton Park synagogue terror attack and the police chief, Sir Stephen Watson, who says he's deeply sorry over missed opportunities to potentially uncover the plot and attack a synagogue in Manchester. Just looking into some of the details here, he said, regrettably, I can confirm the significance of the information stored in al-Shami's devices, this is the Heaton Park terror attacker, was not realised as they had not been examined before the attack took place on the 2nd of October 2025. I mean, it's good that Kevin Hurley came on the programme and gave us the context and talked about it and said, look, police resources are stretched very thinly, and I get that. But why is the officer not suspended? That's what I can't understand. This was clearly a major mistake. Linda, what's your thought on this?
Well, I think that he did the right thing in apologising. But you're right, on this occasion, it was not enough. This is a really heinous crime that was committed, and I don't really understand, because the moot point, I think, centres on getting the contents of the mobile phone, which would have given everyone a clear indication that he was likely to perform a terrorist attack.
Yes.
Now, I don't understand why this couldn't happen, because they had the phone, or rather, he was on police bail for another crime, and it wasn't an ordinary crime, it was a very serious crime.
Rape,
I think it was rape.
Yeah, there are two other crimes, but specifically he was on police bail for that, yeah.
And there are several ways into finding out the contents of the phone. Legally, you can demand the password and all the security points that get in.
They have the phone.
And with the actual phone, there is a way of digitally extracting the information that you need. So whilst an apology is fair enough, I don't think it goes far enough.
It's interesting because this has come out because of another court case which Mohammed Bashir was involved with, but this relates to the Heaton Park attacker who's now dead, Jihad al-Shami, who stated in messages to him, Mohammed Bashir had extremist behaviour. He stated virulent anti-Semitic opinions, complained that his posts to a WhatsApp group about martyrdom were being deleted. He was made part of a WhatsApp group run by al-Shami, along with 11 other members, to which he sent more than 2,000 messages. This is from a judge saying that they included exalting martyrdom and posting messages about exterminating Jewish men and taking Jewish women as concubines. Bashir also rejoiced at watching videos of Syrian soldiers being beheaded. The 11 other members I'm worried about as well. Have they been lifted? Have they been arrested? Are they under investigation? The point is with this that I don't expect a single overworked police officer to look through every single message in every single WhatsApp group. There's got to be a very basic piece of technology that can put in keywords you can hook a phone up to, and they can put in keywords and they can essentially digitally look at the phone and say, are they talking about jihad? Are they talking about rape, as was the case here? Are they talking about blowing people up? What are they talking about? And can we get those messages? I just don't think this is good enough. What do you think, Lewis?
I think trust in the police is on the floor at the moment, and whilst we're saying, you know, an apology isn't enough, I think what we need, now that the case is over and they can talk about things, I almost think they need to take us through it in much more detail, step by step. Why was this miss? Why did this happen? If you think about what tragically happened to Anne Widdecombe a few weeks ago, a lot of people there just absolutely questioning the police. Obviously, we can't talk about it too much because it's an active case, so it's any more than that. But I think at some point they have to come out and give us all the detail. Yes. I think that's what we miss. You know, we've got this apology, but that's not really the detail. You know, why was this phone missed? Is it because you couldn't get into the phone? Because we were having a debate in the green room about...
you can get into the phone.
Yeah, you think that we can get into... I am under the impression sometimes you cannot get into the phone. Some of them are locked in a certain way, you just can't get in.
Are you telling me that MI5 couldn't get into a phone if they had the handset?
That's what I'm...
They could get in. I mean, if you're on police bail, they can say... If they've arrested you, they can say, give us the title of your phone.
And what if you say I forgot it?
Well, I don't think...
If they had possession of the phone...
They could get into it.
They'll say, yeah.
I'm not so sure. But in any case, I think that what we need to do is... Why was this phone not looked at?
That actually... Sorry to interrupt you, Lewis, but that actually brings up another point. If they looked at... They didn't look at the phone for this, but we haven't been told, did they look at the phone because of the rape case, for example?
That's my point.
And did they type in, you know, rape in or words around that crime into the phone and not look at the other things or ignore them?
What we need out of cases like this is new practices. So is it your idea where you can sort of have an AI go through the phone and pull up any content?
You would imagine that would be a really easy thing to do.
But then there will be people that will say, hold on, this was obviously a very serious case, but if you were arrested for something and then the police's, you know, process was just like, we just take their phone, we run it through, we check for anything. Do we want that society? Okay. I don't know.
Linda?
All I wanted to say was that I've done some work with a very senior counter-terrorism officer who says that very, very dangerous, like this guy, but perhaps in a more organised fashion, terrorists, they don't use mobile phones for the precise reason that they are easy to get into if you know how to. So I do not believe the police could not get into that phone. I don't believe it.
Lots on Gary Lineker. We'll get to him on the debate desk in a second. Gary says, another Gary, says if Gary Lineker wants to pay more tax, he had the perfect open goal when HMRC asked him to cough up 4.9 million in unpaid taxes related to his earnings as they considered him to be an employee of the BBC. But he didn't. He fought them in court instead. Why? Cat in Stockport says, if Gary Lineker wants to pay more tax, why did he go to court with HMRC to reduce his tax liability? He insisted he was self-employed to save a couple of million in tax. And Trev in Middleton says, it was blatantly obvious to me yesterday that what was being said was she didn't care who stops the boats as long as they are stopped. Definitely doctored. Very interesting. What do you think of everything that's been said, including with the Heaton Park Synagogue? Whatever your opinion, however you want to say it, give us a shout. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 and WhatsApp me as well on that main number, or give me a ring 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Nat in Tel Aviv, who says, I'm with Linda, Peter. Robert Jenrick should have apologised. Yeah, OK, Labour may not have, but you, Reform, Robert, have been trying to convince us you are different. Gary says, I'm tired of all these people on the left blaming the state that the country is now in on what the Conservatives did in 2010. Yesterday it was the lack of prison places. Today it's our incompetent police force. Perhaps if back then the outgoing Labour government hadn't crashed the economy, doubled our national debt as a share of GDP, left behind an annual budget deficit equivalent to an eye-watering 300 billion today, and left that note at the Treasury saying there's no money left, then the incoming Conservative government might have been able to avoid making dramatic cuts to public spending, says Gary. Speaking of the finances of the country, let's talk about what Gary Lineker is saying. He has talked about a wealth tax on his podcast. That's the one he interviewed Andy Burnham on last week. Let's hear a little clip of him.
Economically, what can you do differently? A wealth tax, possibly, of the super rich, which is what a lot of people, economists, are calling for.
Let's go to two members of the super rich, Linda Jubilee and Lewis Oakley, who are benevolently going to pay £1 million each to HMRC tomorrow. Lewis, what do you make of this?
Look, this idea of them signing this letter about we actually will, I think that there's a question about authenticity, right? Because everyone said, well, you could just pay it. Like, why have you got to sign this letter? Would it have been better if actually all 120 people on it, I think it was, actually did pay £1 million themselves
it's
as a gesture?
signaling. That's all it is.
But look, we don't have any money. I mean, is it we pay out more through the state than we actually take in tax? And I think that the question about the millionaires is an interesting one, because all we're ever told is if we charge millionaires more, they'll leave.
Some of them will.
Yeah, well, and now we've got some millionaires saying, no, we won't leave, we don't mind being taxed more. So it's an interesting debate. I don't actually think it will work, because what they're talking about is taxing wealth rather than earnings. Well, who's going to go around to all these millionaires' houses and prize up their art and their gold? And
well, that's a very good point. That is a very good point. Because what does 10 million mean? Does it mean the company's valued at £10 million? Does it mean they've got £10 million in a post office savings account?
Or if you've this is the interesting point about pensioners as well, because we have people, including one who's coming on later today, who talks about, you know, millionaire pensioners. Well, most pensioners don't have £1 million sitting in a bank account, but it's their house. Asset. Yeah. So are you then going to say to these millionaires, actually, we're going to take a painting, or we're going to take a bit of your house?
Do you know what? I just think that Gary Lineker is a great sports presenter, but I don't think...
Full stop.
But I don't think that Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs, who will be advising Andy Burnham, I gather, needs to step down right now in favour of Mr Lineker.
Yes, I don't think Jim O'Neill should be presenting, you know, The Rest is Football or whatever it's called.
As much as we mock this, though, and say, well, you could just pay it, like, we do have to look at what we do, you know, whether that is taxing some of the bigger corporations more, you know, getting, I'm not going to say any brands, but getting them to pay their full amount of tax, I think that would be good. But looking at, and wealth is an issue, because people might not earn much, but if you've got, you know, 200 million in wealth, like, maybe you should be paying a bit more. It's just about the admin, for me. The tricky thing is the admin of proving wealth.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I spoke to someone who's quite senior in an AI company recently who said, look, the whole tax model has to change because work is going to change. The whole output is going to change, and it's not going to be about income. It's going to be about assets. So whether the state can actually catch up with that, whether we can, you know, say to people like, and also, I mean, do you think this is not just a bit demonstrative from Gary Lineker?
Oh, yeah, I think this whole patriotic millionaires.
Yes, as if you're not patriotic.
So there's presumably unpatriotic
I mean, it's very British to avoid tax. I avoid tax. I have an ISA. Yeah. The ISA allows me to avoid tax. I want to pay as little tax as possible. Yeah. I have an accountant, and the accountant tells me what to do to avoid tax, and it's legal. I don't think there's a huge amount of tax that I should be paying that I'm not, because it's legal. It's within the system. I'm not doing anything dodgy. I'm doing within the law. And the point is that everybody pays some tax, whether you pay income tax or not. You'll pay VAT on products and all the rest of it. The point is that most people don't pay extra tax. They say, oh, tax the millionaires and the billionaires. Well, if you become a millionaire or a billionaire, you're probably not going to want to pay much tax either, unless you're Gary Lineker.
And also, if you're someone who's had their own business and they've built their own business and they are generating wealth, they are employing people, they're keeping their margins pretty tight, they're not paying themselves much. A lot of people who have their own businesses don't pay themselves at all for the first couple of years.
Yes.
And they're generating something for the economy. Why would you slap them down so they could not help people? I don't understand that at all.
I think we have to keep money flowing through the economy. Is my thing.
That's my point.
I wonder. Yeah, and I wonder, is there something where you can say, look, you can only put so much away, and the rest you've got to put back into what we are doing at the moment. I think we're running out of time. We have a whole generation, my generation, that can barely afford their bills, and that means we don't have the fun money to be like, you know what, I've got a stupid idea. I'm going to create some socks with cups on it or something ridiculous and sell.
We're not going to have fun money.
Yeah, exactly.
But because for the next 3 years it's going to be really tight because we have the equivalent of having to turn round an ocean-going liner. Now, there are 3 ways of dealing with this. There's increased taxes, there are cut government expenditure, and the big one is benefits, and there's borrowing money, which we don't particularly want to do.
Which we can't do because that would change.
There are only 3 levers.
And that would change the fiscal rules. Let me ask you about talking about fun money, as you said, going somewhere, having a bit of fun, enjoying your evening. Going to the pub is something that has become more expensive for a lot of people. Running pubs, much more expensive as well, 60% more expensive than 6 years ago, as someone told me recently in the business. Now we have some rate relief for them. Is it enough, Linda?
I don't think it is enough. I think that it is, as Andy Burnham says, it is kind of a step in the right direction, but I think sometimes, apparently there's the quote here is presumably on the wise, the cavalry is coming.
Yes, he said
what
that.
I will say is the day for short, smart, kind of polished marketing phrases is done.
Let's see him saying the cavalry is coming. This is Andy Burnham in a pub, of course, talking about how it's all going to be marvellous. Let's see what the Prime Minister has been saying today.
This is a first step today, but it's an important step. I made this commitment in the Makerfield by-election because we're losing pubs. Pubs need to know that the cavalry is coming. This is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. It could make the difference for a number of venues that are struggling, and it was right to confirm it quickly.
But Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, not impressed.
Last year, I announced Conservatives would abolish business rates. Abolish business rates for most of the high street, not just pubs, but shops, restaurants, retail, hospitality, leisure. And more importantly, I showed how I would pay for it. Our new Prime Minister only wants to cut business rates by 20%, and only for clubs, pubs and music venues. And he hasn't even found the money to pay for it.
So is it enough, Lewis?
It's not enough, but leave the man alone. He's only been there 5 minutes. He's just got his feet behind the desk.
These are major policies that he's announcing. He's saying he's going to fix Britain by doing these things that he's announcing this week.
Look, this is not me throwing my full support behind the man because he has only been there 5 minutes. He's making the right noises so far on the things he's saying. From getting rid of scrapping jury trials to things like this to really care about the pubs. I think he's in the right direction, so we should encourage that.
Okay.
Yes, it's probably not enough, but...
OK, Linda?
Making the right noises. We are at 5 to midnight here. We need to be doing more than making the right noises. And you're saying give the man a break. Well, he's Prime Minister. He's actually running this country, and he's not going to get a break because we have to get out of a lot of trouble. What's going to happen when he wants to implement his social care policy? When
it's going to cost an awful lot of money.
That will cost billions. Okay. What is going to happen when he has to fulfil the NATO commitment on defence spending? Those are the really big, serious issues. And I think this is just tinkering around the edges.
Here's another issue. Lewis, spell draconian.
Oh, I'm dyslexic. That's technically a hate crime what you just said.
OK, Linda, spell draconian.
Hang on a minute. D-R-A-C-O-N-I-A-N.
Well done. Excellent. Spell punctuation.
Punctation.
Very good. Spelling tests apparently are draconian, according to the new Education Secretary, Lucy Powell. Do you think they're draconian, Lewis, as a dyslexic man?
Look, I think that they're important. I wouldn't get away with them entirely, but I do think there are other ways that kids learn. I'm dyslexic. I went through the whole public school system, and I found out that I was dyslexic when I was in the third and final year of university.
Wow.
So there are clearly failings going on. I think it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. I remember sitting at the front of the class trying to read Othello with everyone laughing at me.
Yeah, I know.
Because I couldn't read properly. So I think it's right to point out it's not the be-all and end-all that it used to be, but also we can't pretend that you can't.
I do feel very connected to this because my middle son, who's now grown up and went to university, then got a master's, he was diagnosed with dyspraxia, which means he's got hyperloose ligaments, so he can't form the letters very easily. And he only started to do well once he could work on a laptop. I understand that, but I'm quite a good speller, educated by nuns.
Okay.
Right, very, very strict.
Second to none.
Second to none, second to none, exactly. And I think that spelling, with all due respect, is incredibly, incredibly important. I know that it is I've just told you, I know how difficult it is. But you should never underestimate how important the English language is.
Let's ask you what you think. 0344 499 1000. You can maybe send us a voice note on it so you don't have to type something out and spell it correctly. We've received a voice note from Elisa on the police, particularly in regard to what we've been talking about this evening. Let's hear her voice note.
I'm a bit torn about the attitude to the police officer in Manchester. All prisoners get all their property put into a property bag when they're arrested. I remember many a time when a mobile phone would end up in a property bag. Rarely did I have a reason to have to look into that phone. So I think it's a bit unfair to accuse the officer of misconduct at this stage, because we know now that the guy was a terrorist. We didn't then, or the officers didn't then, and therefore he may not have had reasonable cause to inspect that phone. I don't know the circumstances, but you have to bear that in mind. And as your guest earlier on said, the lack of resources is definitely an issue. So I think hold back on being too hard on the officer. And I think Steve Watson's a good man, and at least he's apologised.
Thank you, Elisa, former police officer. Just briefly, what do you make of that?
I think Steve Watson is a good man, but I think what we said was that the guy had been picked up on an allegation of rape. I think, personally, I would not just have put the phone in the bag and ignored it. I'd have looked at it.
Very quickly?
Maybe, well, this is the thing. Do you need a warrant to look at the phone? And was there a warrant? And what was the warrant for? Like, there is process.
Well, go and get one.
Maybe we need to review the process. But...
Thank you both very, very much. Lively debate desk. We'll have both of you back soon. Linda Jubilee, journalist and political commentator, and Lewis Oakley, broadcaster and podcast host. What do you think of what they said on the debate desk this evening? All these big issues, whether it's Gary Lineker, whether it's the police officer, whatever it is. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's just gone 8 o'clock. Thank you to everybody who has contributed to the programme already this evening. Loads of calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming in. Keep them coming. 0344 499 1000. We'll have a chat to some of our callers in a minute or two. We're talking about spelling and whether spelling tests are draconian. Elisa says the English language is the most beautiful language when used properly. Correct spelling and grammar contribute to that beauty. What do you think about that? Or do you maybe struggle with a bit of spelling and just think actually you can express yourself fine anyway? We're talking about whether Burnham's figures add up. We're talking about the Heaton Park synagogue attack and the clues missed by the police. Kevin Hurley, who's a former police officer himself, says that he thinks that actually we should be a bit more charitable towards the police officers involved because they're so overstretched. Loads to talk about. We'll also talk about the wealth tax and the fact that Gary Lineker and a number of other patriotic millionaires, they call themselves anyway, want to pay more tax. My question is, what's stopping you guys? Write a cheque or just send the money through to HMRC. Stop telling us about it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter or at Cardwell Peter on Instagram. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message, a WhatsApp voice note. Keep them to less than a minute if you can. And you can also give me a ring, of course, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on the Evening Exchange. Ernie said, I saw a documentary on TV that if the police ask for your access code to your phone and you refuse, it's like a criminal offence, a bit like refusing a breath test as well. Another person says, I was really hoping never to see or hear Angela Rayner near government again. She's like a bad smell lingering that won't go away. She makes my skin crawl. Roy says, regarding Mr Righteous Gary Lineker, if he and his mates want to pay more tax, they can voluntarily send a cheque or backs payment to HMRC, but it would not draw as much attention to him and his virtue signalling. Why should anyone even care what he thinks? He's a football pundit, not a politician, says Roy from Gloucester. Let's just hear what Gary Lineker has been saying about this and suggesting a wealth tax.
Economically, what can you do differently? A wealth tax, possibly, of the super rich, which is what a lot of people, economists, are calling for?
Well, let's speak to the economics editor of The Spectator, Michael Simmons. Michael, I definitely want to talk to you about what Andy Burnham's been saying today, particularly when it comes to pubs and rate cuts and all the rest of it. But maybe I could get your view first, actually, on these patriotic millionaires. What do you make of them saying that they could perhaps pay more tax?
Well, as you were suggesting there, if they want to pay more tax, they're welcome to. They can send money to HMRC. I mean, it's only a few years ago that Gary Lineker, was in a court battle with HMRC trying to pay less tax. But what's really interesting about this proposal that the patriotic millionaires back and their specific wealth tax is they admit themselves that the highest kind of tax-paying people, so the richest people that are drawing an income in this country, are very mobile and are also responsible for a huge share of tax. The top 1% of taxpayers pay something like 28% of income tax. Zoom in on the uber rich, and it's even more. And this is the problem with their tax, is they say that we don't think people are going to move or leave the country if our tax was imposed. But they admit that one or two of the uber rich might leave. And if you look at their own figures, and if you look at the government's figures, if even one of the richest taxpayers in this country leaves, you need something like 1,800 average taxpayers to replace that. So I think even if they were, if Andy Burnham listens to them and they get this tax implemented, it doesn't take a mass exodus of the wealthy. It would only take one or two people before the tax is completely pointless and actually doesn't bring in any money at all. Very good point from Betty as well, who's messaged me to say Lineker and co have never paid real taxes as they always do things through limited companies. Well, they would be very quiet if they were paying 46% on all earnings like the rest of us. Well, not everybody pays 46%, but quite a lot of people do. That is a point
point as well, isn't it? And we know, as so many people have pointed out, that Gary Lineker tried not to pay tax. He took HMRC to court. He had a tax case against them. And if he feels so patriotic, maybe he should have paid the tax rather than fighting the court case.
Well, absolutely. And by the way, I don't even blame him for doing that.
I think it's patriotic not to pay tax. I think it's patriotic to pay the tax, render unto Caesar what you're meant to render. But, I mean, would you say that someone is not patriotic because they have an ISA, for example? I have an ISA. That is legal tax avoidance. That is a scheme the government has set up to say, if you put savings into this ISA, into this device, which we have set up, you will not pay as much tax as you would otherwise. Tax avoidance isn't immoral. Tax evasion is immoral. It is legally wrong. But tax avoidance, I would say, is actually pretty patriotic because it means you know the system and you're paying as little tax as you can. And you're also saying to the Exchequer and saying to the government, do more with less.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're someone like Gary Lineker, who is clearly producing for the economy, then you probably are entitled to try to legally minimise your tax. So it's odd that he's changed his tune here. But what's really interesting, and what the left and the right actually don't want to get into, is how our tax system has changed in the last 10 years, or the last 10 or 20 years. Because the truth is that the Conservative government has actually gone quite far in terms of making it progressive, in the sense of the wealthier people paying more, whereas actually taxes on people on lower incomes have kind of stayed flat or are lower than they've been in history. And the Tories don't want to admit that because they're arguing against it now. Labour don't want to draw any attention to that because it doesn't look great for them if actually a Conservative government made the tax system more progressive. And because no one is prepared to admit that fact, we get into this ridiculous situation where we're talking about a wealth tax that's never going to happen, and if it does happen, it won't even work.
Let's talk about Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister. He's done an awful lot in the last few days. He's made an awful lot of spending commitments. We'll talk in a second about whether they will actually add up and whether the money's actually there. And if anybody knows, Michael Simmons is the man who can demystify all of this. Let's just hear a little bit from the Prime Minister. He says the cavalry is coming when it comes to pubs specifically.
This is a first step today, but it's an important step. I made this commitment in the Makerfield by-election because we're losing pubs. Pubs need to know that, you know, the cavalry is coming. You know, this is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. It could make the difference for a number of venues that are struggling, and it was right to confirm it quickly.
And Kemi Badenoch says she is not happy. She's not impressed because it doesn't go far enough. This is what the leader of the Conservatives said.
Last year, I announced Conservatives would abolish business rates. Abolish business rates for most of the high street, not just pubs, but shops, restaurants, retail, hospitality, leisure. And more importantly, I showed how I would pay for it. Our new Prime Minister only wants to cut business rates by 20%, and only for clubs, pubs and music venues. And he hasn't even found the money to pay for it.
Michael, has he found the money to pay for it? Where's the money coming from? Because we've got 340 million commitment when it comes to rough sleeping. Great, good, off you go, fantastic, if the money's there. You've got an 850 million commitment when it comes to energy bills. Now you've got this commitment on taxes and rates for pubs. There's some other stuff in there I'm sure I've forgotten as well. Surely taxes will have to rise to pay for this. We can't do it within existing budgets. The International Monetary Fund has already told us we're on the brink.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When the budget comes, this is going to be John Healey, the new Chancellor's task. He's going to have to actually pay for this blitz of announcements this week. Because, I mean, if we just take two examples, the VAT cut on energy bills, that's really easy to deal with because the government admitted themselves. We didn't need to wait for Darren Jones, the outgoing minister, to say it. It was in their own paperwork that this was to be paid for by scrapping the digital ID scheme. But the digital ID scheme, as they admit, was not not funded either. So that money is going to have to be found in the budget from cuts to other departments, or, as you say, from taxes. And then the one today is the one where they claim to have a vague idea of how to pay for it. This is the business rate cut on pubs. They say, businesses that they view as not doing social good, probably a lot of people view as not doing social good, for instance, vape shops on the high street, they're going to remove tax loopholes and tax advantages for them to pay for it. But as I think Dan Needle, the tax expert, has pointed out today, all you're going to see that happens there is every business that wants to get this business rates cut is going to start serving beer. And the vape shops are going to do something else. And this is a problem when we have these ideas about tax changes. Politicians, civil servants, the people who come up with them think, it's just a static change. They don't think that businesses and people, all of us, change their behaviour. So I think you'll find that enough businesses adapt their function, their way of working, to either take advantage of this business rate cut or to, avoid the hikes on them if they're one of these businesses that are going to have to pay for it. And then before you know it, the sums don't add up. So I think you'll find when we come to the budget in the autumn, the OBR is going to say, you announced all these things in your first week in office. There'll probably be more stuff next week. Here's what it's here's what it's going to cost. Where are you going to get that money from? And as you say, there's only two places. It's going to have to be taxes going up or cuts elsewhere.
Yeah, indeed, and certainly not borrowing, because that would be a breach of the fiscal rules. What do you make of Healy as Chancellor? He's obviously only on sort of day 3.5 today. I mean, it would have been inconceivable for him to take that role without having some money for defence. Are we honestly going to go to 3% of GDP on defence? And again, where does the money come from for that? There's so many questions for Andy Burnham, for John Healy, that just haven't been answered, and they will not put themselves up for the level of scrutiny that we need. We also, that budget needs to come, I think, fairly soon, because, and I'd be very interested in your take on this, Michael, because there's going to be so much speculation, and the markets are going to get even more spooked than they are at the moment about where the money comes from.
Well, I think you're right that in an ideal world, we would just, we've seen gilt yields rising today in the last couple of days. You would set out how you're going to pay for it now. But I think we shouldn't expect an early budget, because there's this rule that you have to give the Office for Budget Responsibility, the people who, judge the cost of the budget, judge what the taxes are bringing in. You have to give them 10 weeks notice of a budget. And I was looking at the calendar earlier. I think that gets us into October anyway. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we're going to have any kind of budget earlier than the autumn. In terms of John Healy as Chancellor, I mean, it caught everyone off guard, didn't it? It's an interesting choice. He's seen as this kind of centre figure between the right and the left of the Labour Party. He does have experience in the Treasury, but what it suggests to me that he's gone with this compromise choice is that this is going to be a Prime Minister who wants to have complete control of economics and fiscal policy in number 10. He doesn't want to get into a battle with his Treasury. He wants to be in total control. And there's political advantages to that. It means that, unlike Keir Starmer, who came in and pretty much the first thing he did was announce cuts on the winter fuel allowance, Andy Burnham's come in and announced these political giveaways. Now, the control he's got over the Treasury has allowed him to do that. There's probably going to be short-term political wins for him. I think Labour will go up in the polls. But the trouble, as you've said, is going to be when this budget comes in, 10 plus whatever weeks' time, and the Treasury say, you've ignored us when you came in and you made these plans. You can't ignore us anymore. Show us the sums.
Yeah. Michael, thank you. You've made that really clear for us. I really appreciate that. That is Michael Simmons there. He's economics editor of The Spectator. Two bits of breaking news to bring you. One of them is that the Southport killer Axel Radicubana has been transferred to Broadmoor Secure Hospital from HMP Belmarsh. HMP Belmarsh in London is generally where terror suspects are held, but also people convicted of terror offences. He, of course, is serving a 52-year sentence. The other bit of breaking news is that the BBC has demanded Trump's January the 6th personal messages. I'll come to that in a second, but let me give you the information first on Southport killer Axel Radicubana being transferred to Broadmoor Secure Hospital from Belmarsh. The Ministry of Justice says the families of those murdered and injured in Southport will be in this country's hearts forever, and our thoughts remain with them. Any decision to transfer transfer an offender is made following an independent clinical assessment under the Mental Health Act. Following rigorous security checks, the offender has been transferred to a high-security psychiatric unit where he will remain until assessed fit to return to prison. Officials have approved this transfer on behalf of ministers. This transfer does not change his sentence, which remains at 52 years, and of which he will serve every single day. That is the Southport murderer Axel Radicubana transferred to Broadmoor Mental Hospital. In the second bit of breaking news, the BBC is demanding Donald Trump's January the 6th personal messages. The broadcaster is seeking communications with advisers in the hours between the White House speech and the President's call for rioters to disperse. The BBC has demanded that Donald Trump hand over his personal messages in an attempt to prove that he incited the 6th of January riots. It's a fight back against the US President's $10 billion defamation lawsuit. BBC's lawyers hope to prove in court that he should be held responsible for urging his supporters to storm the US Capitol. We remember that doctored clip, that spliced clip that made him say things that he didn't say. Last year, the Daily Telegraph, which is reporting this, revealed that a speech given by Mr Trump on the 6th of January 2021 was spliced together in that Panorama documentary that made it appear as if he was directly inciting the mob in protest against the election result. If there's any more in either of those stories, of course, we will bring them to you as soon as we can. We'll go to the phones in just a second if you want to make your voice heard on any of the issues that we're talking about today. 0344 499 1000. We'll take some calls in just a moment here on Talk.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham's been in touch and says Gary Lineker can always pay my tax bill that's due at the end of this month. Another person says Lineker was a footballer and that's it, nothing more. Someone needs to remind him. Elle says the BBC, for goodness sake, Trump's messages have nothing to do with the fact that the BBC doctored his comments. They have no legal right to demand this. Dawn says, so far Andy Burnham has concentrated on changing things that Rachel Reeves instigated. She claimed that she sorted out the economy. Burnham obviously doesn't think so. Ash in Slough says, evening Cardi P, I'm afraid the police's claim of a lack of resources is a bridge too far. How many tweets were prosecuted last year? Was it 12,000? Not to mention all the other non-crimes they investigated despite successive Home Secretaries telling them not to. They decided to put their alliance into extreme political beliefs. I no longer consent. Andrew in Herne Hill says, I was taught spelling a spelling rule at at school. I before E except after C. It doesn't work for niece or there. Most confusing. Yeah, it's not a particularly good rule, it must be said. Rick says spelling and grammar are very important. If you let standards fall, then communication starts to suffer. A quick story. Back in the 80s, it was being said that stop with all the spelling and grammar as long as the person can express themselves. A woman called into a radio station I was listening to. She said that her daughter got a job as a secretary and was sacked the following day because she couldn't spell. She was asked to type a letter, and of course when it was proofread, it had lots of spelling mistakes. Yes, it's the eat, shoots and leaves, isn't it? That story about the panda. Pandas eat, shoots and leaves, and if you don't put the punctuation in, it eats, then shoots someone and leaves, rather than eating leaves and shoots. So there we are. Good evening, Peter, says Leslie. Like Linda, I was educated by nuns. School day started with 10 minutes of mental arithmetic and weekly spelling tests. To this day, aged 81, I do not use a calculator. Do you know what? I actually thought recently of possibly doing GCSE maths again, because I had a really bad day on my exam. I should have got a better mark than I did. I feel I let down my teacher. That was, nearly 30 years ago. And I thought, maybe I'll do GCSE maths again. My maths is not good, like many, many journalists. I looked it up and it's £750. So I thought, perhaps not at my local further education college. But there we are. Let's go to the phones. Nigel's in London and wants to talk about what has happened in Heaton Park. Do you think, Nigel, that actually we should be more compassionate and understanding of the police when they didn't look at this evidence that could have, in theory, prevented the Heaton Park attack? What do you think?
Well, good evening to you. I'd like to, if I may, bring in your spelling story to go with the policing story, to say that the police should learn how to spell accountability and transparency.
Good point.
Because clearly there's no transparency and accountability from the police. And I think that what people like Kevin Hurley, and first of all, congratulations on him being elected as the recent crime commissioner. But I think that Kevin Hurley seems to have his foot back as an old police officer with making excuses for police officers. I'm sorry to say, and I said to your gentleman, Matthew, took my telephone call, the public have absolutely zero confidence in policing. This was highlighted by the Baroness Casey review. It's been highlighted again by Lord Blunkett. And let's not forget, if it wasn't for a BBC Panorama journalist, then 11 police officers would still be serving at Charing Cross, who were misogynistic, racist, and made some vile comments. So I'm sorry, I don't accept anything the police say to be truthful and acceptable. They need to understand that they serve the public, not to serve themselves.
What should happen now, Nigel? We know there's an independent Office of Police Conduct investigation into this, but the police officer who failed to spot these things isn't suspended, still on duty.
Well, how can the public have confidence in a police officer in that position who is currently still serving in frontline policing? It's the basics to do your due diligence, investigate, seek out and find out things that are relevant to an inquiry, not just stick it in a plastic bag with a label on it for it to be looked at some months later. I really don't believe that police officers, the College of Policing, the National Police Chief Council, absolutely understand the public's feeling about how the police act. Because if they did, they perhaps try and change it, but they just don't care at all.
Although Mark Levy, who is the chief executive of the Jewish Representative Council, that said, though the news would inevitably be a disappointment to the affected families, he backed Stephen Watson as a wonderful friend to the Jewish people in Manchester. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm sure he's got evidence to suggest that Mr. Watson has been helpful and supportive of the Jewish community. But let me just draw your attention, and I've mentioned this to you before, 32 or 3 years ago, that police in Barnet, who are now protecting the Jewish community in that area, in Golders Green, Finchley, Hendon, Colindale, Edgware, etc., are the same police officers who ripped down the posters of Jewish hostages from a chemist shop. So how can one have confidence in policing?
Nigel, thank you. I appreciate that. That's Nigel in London there. Roy's been in touch. Oh, sorry, I've read that one out. Marge says, if you get arrested for an indictable offence, regardless how minor, we're going to seize all phones and keep it for months while we look into it for prohibited images, terror, fraud, drugs, etc. The civil liberties lawyers will be rubbing their hands with glee, says Marge. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi, Cardi P. Gary Lineker is no David Beckham. He's not getting a night out. 120 of his millionaire friends want to pay more tax. There are 2.4 million millionaires in the UK, an absolute drop in the ocean. Dave in Lancashire says, good evening, Cardi P. How about this for an idea? Scrap the House of Lords. That would save the economy a lot of money. Get rid of 50% of the state employees that, in my opinion, add nothing to society other than cost money and cause problems. Bob says, if you have made 1, 10 or 100 million, you've already paid 45% tax on your wealth. Graham says all guests should be asked to spell diarrhea, as that is what Burnham spouts each day. Let's hear from Marie in Barry. Marie, you're very welcome to the programme. Thank you for giving me a ring. What would you like to say? What's on your mind?
Hi. First of all, I had one thing to say, and now I've got a few, if you've got time.
We've got time. Take your time and tell us what you think.
I'll try to be quick. Right, my first call was about the Robert Jenrick and the Joe White thing. Okay. I do think Robert Jenrick may have been mistaken. He's put that out without verifying and checking. But what has come out is Joe White says she doesn't care how the votes are stopped. Like, she should care how the votes are stopped. Is that a license for people who want to stop the votes in another way?
Isn't it? I mean, she would argue, Marie, that she's saying the method, and she was an immigration minister at the time, we should add. She doesn't matter how it's done as long as it's done.
Yeah, but she's a member of parliament and she's just said, I don't care how they're stopped. Does that mean she wants them stopped?
I think she does. From what we hear, what she actually said.
Care how it's done, and then does that, like, for if anyone's an extremist and goes like, well, she said she doesn't care, let's do it in this way, and I disagree with that as well. But she should always care. You should always care. You can not mind about something, but you should always care.
And what do you think about Jenrick and his position? Should he apologise?
Yes, he should. He should. He's put that out there. I think the way they twist things politically to try and suit them and say, oh, well, she said this, he said that, I don't think that's right. It just takes away from the thing. But she should always... I don't think anyone should say, I don't care. You should always care. So that was my point on that.
Sure.
Gary Lineker. I'm not a football person, never have been. Obviously, I know who Gary Lineker is. I'm 55. I've grown up knowing who Gary Lineker is without knowing about anything about football. I Googled the term after he'd been on his thing with Andy Burnham, the goal hanger podcast.
Yes.
I Googled the term goal hanger because I didn't know what that meant. And it says, AI says, and it's an informal and often disapproving term for a player that stays near the opponent's goal or waiting for an easy chance to score rather than defend than to play. So I think that just sums it up for me, really.
Okay. Well, listen, and is that your final point, Marie, or have you other points to make?
I did have two more, but
go for it. No, go for it. No, I want to hear what they are, Marie. You're making you're talking a lot of common sense this evening, as you often do when you ring in. So tell me the other 2 points.
Right. The earlier guest that you had on, the young gentleman and the lady.
Yeah. So Lewis and Linda.
Andy Burnham, the young guy said he's making the right noises, and the lady who was more similar to my age, I dare to say she's definitely younger than me.
She's called Linda. Yep.
Linda, and she sort of like, I watched her go making the right noises, and I just thought, teenagers do that. Andy Burnham's doing that. He's making the right noises. He's not, you know, when you say to your kids, you need to go up and do this, you need to go and do that, and they go, yeah, Mum, I'll do it in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm feeling about that. The other one is about the spelling and the grammar. I think it's really really important. The times I have messaged my children, they send something back, and I go like, I don't know what you mean.
What are you actually saying? What are you talking about?
What are you actually saying?
Yeah, it's about being clear, isn't it? It's about being clear.
Being clear. I send punctuation in my messages, question marks,
yeah,
and all of that kind of thing. And one of the other, I had it on my notes. Somebody said not long ago, eat, shoots and leaves.
Yeah, indeed.
It's like grammar.
I know, it's a good book. It's the same as Let's Eat, Grandma versus Let's Eat Grandma, which are two very different things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Marie,
and when you get a text message that doesn't have anything of that with loads of abbreviations, you go,
what does it actually mean? Yeah, I know what you mean, Marie. Although there are a lot of people whose spelling isn't great, and it's, you know, they would argue it's not their fault if they weren't taught correctly, if everyone around them their grammar wasn't great or whatever, and often
absolutely,
you know, I mean, my arithmetic needs to be better. I should probably take some steps to sort that out. Should people fix it themselves, or do they just say, well, actually, I wasn't really taught particularly well at school? What do you think?
Well, I just think, well, yes, some people have dyslexia, dyspraxia, all of those things, but it doesn't mean we should stop trying and doing things for everybody else. Because if you just go, well, this person doesn't know, so why bother?
Yeah.
And let's just use abbreviations, then, well...
It's a very good point, although there are some words I just can't spell. And I always have to think, separate is one I always have to think how to spell, and it's para as in parachute, in the middle of it. You've got to kind of think about it.
We all do that. No matter, I've watched on Talk all day today when it started with Jeremy Kyle and saying spell this. The amount of people that write it down, I do it. Sometimes I can think of it off the top of my head. Sometimes you need to write, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally correct. Marie, we'll just have to move on, but listen, I really appreciate all the points you've made this evening, and they've been great. Nuns keep coming up and appear to be the way to learn how to be a good speller, because Penny in Essex says, my husband was a merchant banker. His spelling is horrendous. I worked in the prison service and my spelling is brilliant. I was also taught in a convent by nuns. The Labour government, says this texter, have been destroying businesses for 2 years. Burnham is the brass neck to stand there and tell us help is here. We're economically broken, culturally broken, and our legal system is a shambles, and it starts at the border. A country cannot function with a porous boundary. It affects everything. Quite a lot on Gary Lineker as well. Mike in Whitney, lovely part of the world, says, hi Peter, what on earth is wrong with people being rich, whether inherited or earned or lucky? What's the problem? Rich people spend and spend and spend, putting their money back into the system, creating wealth in other people who receive their money. The UK has the complete opposite emotions of successive people to the USA. Rich people and wealthy pensioners spend and give to the economy and their families. Act as if you hate them and they will leave, says Mike. Well, we're going to get into this exact debate in just a second. Reem Ibrahim will join us from Washington, and Matthew Hulbert will be with us as well. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Elaine, who says, what hope do we have if police can have a man called Jihad in custody and they don't even look at his phone, says Elaine. More on that story about Heaton Park and the synagogue and what could have been prevented a little bit later on. But I want to talk about tax and what Gary Lineker has said. And a very interesting remark, actually, that someone has tweeted in. Let me just find it here on my phone. Nick Heath says, if Gary Lineker wanted to pay more tax to the UK government, why did he register his company in the British Virgin Islands? And that was in 2017. The Sun newspaper reported how the Paradise Papers showed how Gary Lineker bought a villa in Barbados in 2005 via his Goalhanger Inc. firm, which is registered in the British Virgin Islands. So that is an interesting point to make, certainly, and thank you to Nick for that. Also, Rosie points out, before he accepted for C, does work with Nice. Can I suggest your listener goes back to school? So the whole debate on how you spell things and the importance of spelling and grammar, which I feel very strongly about, is something you feel strongly about as well. So please let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Gary Lineker has talked about possible wealth tax. This is what he said on his podcast.
Economically, what can you do differently? A wealth tax, possibly, of the super rich, which is what a lot of people, economists, are calling for?
Well, let's find out what one economist thinks. That's Reem Ibrahim, who is in Washington, and against her and speaking as well is Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist who's in Hinckley. So thank you to him and thank you to her for joining me. Matthew, what do you think about a wealth tax? What do you think about what Gary Lineker is saying?
Great to see you tonight, Peter, and always good to see my friend Reem as well. So, look, I mean, once again, I agree with the city of my birth's favourite son. As you know, Peter, I'm born of Leicester and from Leicestershire, and I think he's speaking sense yet again. And I should just point out that it's not just him, it's him and 120 other very wealthy, very successful people, multimillionaires, who've said, taxes more. We want to pay more into the system. And I know that you're going to say...
So why don't they just do that, Matthew? Why don't they just do it?
I was just about to say, I know you're going to say, why don't they just volunteer to pay more? And some of them may well do. I don't know these people personally. But what they're saying is the system should demand more of them because they want to pay more. They want to be forced to pay more for the public services which have helped make them the success that they are, because ultimately this country has helped make them a success.
Not necessarily. Reem, what do you think?
Well, these people fundamentally want to believe that the government spending their money is a good thing and that the money that the government spends is spent on good things that make the country a better place. Now, in the UK, the top 1% already pay about 27% of income tax that the government take in. So they are already paying an enormous amount of money. If Gary Lineker wants to pay more taxes, he can do that already. Every millionaire in the country, if you're signing petitions, joining patriotic millionaires, saying the patriotic thing is to pay more taxes, well, do it.
Do you not think it is patriotic to pay your tax?
I don't think that there is anything patriotic or anything that shows that you love your country than telling the government exactly what they're doing with their spending their money is wrong. I mean, the idea that the government spending more money is going to somehow make the country a better place is absolutely incorrect. The way in which the economy moves and the way in which we're able to ensure that people have jobs, that businesses are able to succeed, that people actually have the dignity of what it means to have a reason to get up every morning, that does not happen with government. It happens in the private sector. The UK is already suffering under the highest tax burden in British history. We cannot get any higher when it comes to our taxation levels. And the fundamental question here is, why do we think the way in which we can make the country better is by getting the government to spend more money? The government spending more money does not make things better. Take the NHS. The NHS has record levels of public spending. We are seeing about £200 billion a year being wasted down a bureaucratic black hole that, by the way, has the second highest avoidable mortality rates in all of Western Europe. I really do not understand this idea that all we need is just more money. All we need is just more taxes and more money being spent by these government bureaucrats.
Let's let Matthew have a say on that, because Reem's very clear there that she believes the private sector is the way forward. You clearly believe the public sector is the way forward. You're talking about that and saying that these millionaires may have been assisted by the public sector. They may have had no assistance from the public sector whatsoever, or very little. I just wonder what you make of what Reem has to say there, Matthew.
Well, a couple of quick things. Number one, I'm not on the hard left. There absolutely is a place for the private sector. It's what fuels our economy. I've just always said that the private sector is the private sector and the public sector is the public sector. And in my view, never the twain shall meet, because they're two very different things. And secondly, I think what Gary Lineker and these 120 other patriotic millionaires have said rather gives the lie to the argument that is often put by the right, and that we're hearing from Reem today, that, if we tax these people more, they're going to leave. These 121 are saying they're not going to leave, they're going to stay in this country, and they want to be taxed more.
What about every other millionaire in the country that has already left, Matthew? The problem is not...
The unpatriotic millionaires.
No.
One second, both of you. Hold on. 1 second, both of you. When, those 120 people, those patriotic, as they call themselves, millionaires, fair enough. But there are something like 2.4 million millionaires in the country. So 120 is a very, very small...
And you think they're all going to pack their bags, do you?
I'm not saying that, Matthew. I'm simply saying that the 120 are a small proportion.
Can I just ask,
hold on. Just let me finish my point, please, and then I'll come to you, Reem. If one of those people leaves, if one of those millionaires leaves, that is the same as 1,800 average taxpayers leaving, Matthew. So it's very significant tax-wise if a millionaire leaves. Is your argument simply if they don't want to pay...
It's a kind of blackmail. Is that what we're saying?
It's not blackmail. It's not blackmail. Well, it's someone deciding what they want to do.
It sounds like blackmail to me.
Okay, Reem?
Well, it's obviously not blackmail. What Peter is saying is that, it's the fact, right? It's the fact that millionaires pay more taxes. And if a millionaire leaves, that obviously costs a lot more money for the Treasury, and ultimately means that the rest of every other taxpayer will have to foot the bill even further. The question I have is, what do we want done with this money? You want to tax the rich, take more and more money from those that are wealthy and successful. And what exactly do you want done with it? And even more crucially, why do you think that money is better spent by government bureaucrats or indeed politicians than the people that made the money themselves? What's really interesting, I think, is that millionaires and very, very wealthy people that have built up businesses, that have been able to create jobs, those people are able to invest that money. And that investment, that capital infrastructure, that means that there is more opportunities for more jobs. There are more opportunities for new economic growth, for things that actually make people better off. I come from a philosophy in which I do not think the best use of money, the best use of resources should be decided by the state. I don't trust politicians, I don't trust the government, and I do not think that the government having more money to waste on absolutely ridiculous vanity projects is a good thing.
So would you say the welfare state... Hold on. I am chairing this debate. Hold on, Matthew. Reem, vanity projects. Would you say the NHS is a vanity project? Would you say the welfare state is a vanity project?
I would not say that the NHS is a vanity project. I would say it's a complete and utter failure. Since the NHS's inception, we have seen enormous amounts of money spent on it. And yet in the year before the pandemic, the NHS, we saw in the UK, had the second highest avoidable mortality rates in all of Western Europe.
Okay.
When you look at almost every single indicator on healthcare outcomes, lung cancer survival rates, breast cancer survival rates, prostate cancer survival rates, cardiac, all of these aspects of health outcomes, the UK is one of the worst performers.
Well, this isn't a debate on the NHS, but there is a point. There is a point that Reem makes there, that the NHS is hugely expensive. You don't think there's enough money in it, Matthew. Some people say it's the envy of the world, but no other country has it. What would you say in reaction to what Reem has said, Matthew?
Well, I think that the reason that the NHS hasn't performed in recent years up to what it could, and those that know about my late mum's situation will know that I'm as aware of this as anyone else. But as you know, Peter, I blame that on chronic underfunding and increased privatisation. So I'm afraid me and Reem just very much disagree on this, which is why you've had us on.
Can I ask you about something else, actually, both of you?
Yeah.
So Andy Burnham has suggested, he hasn't done it and he may not do it, but he suggested that he may lift the threshold for paying tax from £12,570. He says that that is something that came up on the doorsteps many times in Makerfield. There are lots of people, pensioners especially, who have been brought into tax because their money they receive is more than that. What do you think about that as an idea, Matthew? Because there are a lot of people who don't pay any income tax in our society. What do you make of the suggestion, anyway, that that 12,570 threshold should be lifted?
Well, I'd welcome that, and it would follow on from what the Lib Dems did in coalition in government. There wasn't much from that government that I agreed with, but I did agree with this. I think it helped people at the lower end of the scale. So I'd welcome that if you did that.
Reem, what do you think?
Moving deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, look, I think it's a good idea, right? I want less people in the country paying less taxes. And if you are only earning £12,000 a year, you shouldn't be paying high levels of tax or indeed any tax. I do think that the fundamental question here is how we can make the UK a more competitive place so that people are earning far, far more money. The reason why the UK is so poor is because we've done it to ourselves. Public spending as a proportion of GDP is now at 46%. Half the economy is the government. And we're asking ourselves, we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs, asking, why is Britain so poor? Why is it so many people in the United Kingdom cannot afford to feed their children? Why can they not afford to have fantastic lives? Why? Why are we asking ourselves this and not looking in the mirror and saying, hey, maybe the government that regulate every single aspect of every single thing you do, maybe the government taxing every single penny you have hard worked for, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe the fact that these government bureaucrats spunk all of our money and say that, you know, you should be thanking us for doing all these amazing things for you. Maybe we should look more in depth at why the UK is so poor and why other countries manage to be far more successful. Fundamentally, the British government is so big and it keeps getting bigger, and it looks as though the way politics is going, it will only get bigger over the next few years. And I feel very, very depressed about the state of Britain in that way.
Reem, thank you. That's Reem Abraham there, who is a writer for Reason magazine, joining us from Washington. Unusually, I'm going to ask Matthew just to stay on for a minute or two before he goes, Matthew Hulbert, because we've had so many questions that have come in for you, Matthew, but Reem can perhaps leave us with our thanks and go about her day in Washington. Whereas Matthew, I'm going to read you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that have come in for you. Maybe have a pen ready or a pencil and you can write down. Betty says, tell Matthew he's not getting any more of my money. Does he pay 46% and 20% for everything on top? And anyone on more than 300,000 pays less tax because they can afford the experts to help them. So the only people who pay more are on 40,000 to 175,000. Mark says perhaps these 120 millionaires should lead by example, but they never will because they have smart accountants to set them up with offshore tax havens for them. Ash in Slough says, Cardi P, please ask Matthew how much he paid in tax last year. If it's not over 20k, he's not a patriot and is letting hard-working people with several jobs carry his load. Muck in or shut up. Betty says, please ask Matthew to show us the refugees he would take in. Lineker, like Matthew, will not pay a penny more than they have to. I'm a 1% payer and I'm off ASAP. Forget millionaires. And a final point from Wendy, who says, can you ask Matthew if he has bought things from Amazon? They're a massive tax avoider, in Wendy's opinion. What would you say to that, Matthew?
Gosh, there's a lot there, isn't there? Yes, I have bought stuff from Amazon, and look, if you want to call me a hypocrite, then feel free to do so. It's just a very easy thing to access. So yes, I have done that. In terms of my own financial situation, I don't think it's anyone's beeswax, but I'm happy to tell you that I work for a charity on a very modest wage indeed, but of course I pay my taxes as is appropriate. Beyond that, I'm not sure what more I need to tell you.
Would you pay more? Would you say it's patriotic to say, actually, there's more that I can pay? I mean, I pay my taxes and I pay exactly what my accountant tells me to pay. I pay it as efficiently and quickly as I can. When it comes to making further contributions, I would honestly rather give, not that I'm Mother Teresa, but I'd honestly rather give money to charity rather than the state necessarily. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, and of course, people are perfectly willing to, if they've got excess cash, and most of us haven't, but for those that have, they're willing to, they can spend that how they want. They can give it to the government if they want. They can spend it on charity if they want. They can spend it on themselves if they want. But I think, Gary Lineker and his fellow patriotic millionaires have at least started a debate, and something that we should consider very wisely here.
I will let you go and open that Amazon box that's behind you in your kitchen. Matthew, thank you. That's Matthew Hulbert there, who joins us. He is a Liberal Democrat activist and political commentator. Lots to discuss on all of that. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Elle says at least Ream didn't have a go at us pensioners for once. Let's speak to Michael Kill in just a second about Burnham's 20% rate cut for pubs in England. It's a first step. Badenoch asking, is that it? Stay with us.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I want to talk now about this policy from Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister, about the 20% rate cut for pubs in England. This is what he said about it.
This is a first step today, but it's an important step. I made this commitment in the Makerfield by-election because we're losing pubs. Pubs need to know that the cavalry is coming. This is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. It could make the difference for a number of venues that are struggling, and it was right to confirm it quickly.
But Kemi Badenoch is not impressed.
Last year, I announced Conservatives would abolish business rates. Abolish business rates for most of the high street, not just pubs, but shops, restaurants, retail, hospitality, leisure. And more importantly, I showed how I would pay for it. Our new Prime Minister only wants to cut business rates by 20%, and only for clubs, pubs and music venues. And he hasn't even found the money to pay for it.
Michael Kill is the Chief Executive of the Nighttime Industries Association. Michael, are you breathing a sigh of relief that the cavalry is coming?
Well, I think the sentiment and the direction of travel is positive. If you can appreciate, third day in the office, and we've probably had more movement towards our industry and conversations around our industry than we've had over the last 6 months from the previous Chancellor and Prime Minister. So
does Andy Burnham get it, do you think? Does he understand the life of your members?
I think he does. I think the challenge we have is a checks and balances position. He's got to make it work. Whatever he spends or whatever he reduces in terms of tax to the Treasury, he's also got to make up. So I think for us, it's a step forward. Is it a drop in the ocean as at the moment? Yes, without a doubt. But I think that we're going to be pushing for more to come, particularly national insurance contribution for employers and VAT, which we're pushing for the budget to have a due regard for.
Do you think you'll get movement on that, or will Andy Burnham and John Healey say, well, we've helped you, we've other people now to help?
I think what is clear is when you look at the cabinet rhetoric, he's talking about the cost of living. When you see the Chancellor today for the first time, the cost of doing business is something they talk about. There's not a sympathetic position. It's a matter of them trying to stand up and find a way around it. I think the key thing is it's finding a way, and that's the sentiment that I took away from it. Without a doubt, there's a lot of people out there saying that this £1,100 a year for a pub is not going to touch the sides, and I have no doubt that's exactly the case. But the fact that we're driving towards trying to find solutions, and we're talking to businesses, and particularly people like myself, directly with the team to understand how the best way of moving forward, I think is an important step forward, rather than this creating policy for the industry. We're actually involving the industry, which it sounds very simple, but definitely not the case.
So what do you want him to do? You've talked about national insurance, you've talked about other changes that would be there. The budget's probably coming up in October time, no date for it just yet, but if you could wave a magic wand, what would your further counsel to the Chancellor be?
I think the key thing that we're asking for is the national insurance contribution for employers has been onerous. It's taken a lot of young people out of work. It's stopped us investing in the next generation, and it's impacted us in terms of the financial position. So the reversal of that, I think, is important. That also spreads right the way across the UK, because there is no Barnett consequential position on it. What it means is it will go direct to businesses in every UK region, devolved as well. VAT is a similar programme. We've got to look at that and how we can start to protect and support some of those vulnerable businesses, particularly the small, medium enterprise businesses that make up 70% of our sector. So for me, I think this is, as they quite rightly said, targeting and supporting smaller businesses while sort of putting the impact on some of the bigger businesses, the warehouses who are circumventing the tax system.
Michael, thank you as always. That's Michael Kildare, who is the Chief Executive of the Nighttime Industries Association. Ash has been in touch to say, Cardi P, there you have it. Matthew Hulbert's very generous with spending other people's money, but frugal with his own contribution. He freeloads off the back of hard-working people like senior nurses, army sergeants or train drivers. In my opinion, he's not allowed an opinion until he's working a 70-hour week. Well, Ash, am I allowed an opinion? I don't work a 70-hour week. I must say, and I'm very glad that I don't, although there are lots of people who do and make a huge contribution, a far bigger contribution than me, it must be said. Phil says Burnham's promising to cut 20% off rates for pubs and clubs. This will start in April 2027. Is this possibly a carrot in case he gets forced into a general election? I think that is a very interesting point, Phil, and appreciate it. Ernie says Gary Lineker is so naive. Let him give some of his millions to the government. I'm sure they'll squander it for him on something that the majority of British people don't want, like foreign aid. If his money came from hard work and building a business from scratch, investing in it every year, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be so keen to give it away, says Ernie. And David says Reem is spot on. In a meeting yesterday, 2 multi-millionaires, £20 million plus including assets, are leaving for Jersey. Myself, the wife and dog are also selling up. We're not multi-millionaires, but we're mobile for work and can get visas to operate our business. Burnham charging interest in foreign aid shows how amateur this Burnham government is, says David. Very, very interesting point there. Appreciate it. We're going to talk in just a second to Kevin Schofield, who is from the Huffington Post, about all the big political issues of the day, including that controversy over Robert Jenrick and the Labour MP demanding an apology after the misleading clip. We'll also talk about the threat to from Iran, threatening to attack us here in the UK. RAF Fairford Colonel James Sunderland will join us a little bit later on. Whatever your view on all the topics that we have that we're talking about this evening, please do get in touch. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. I really appreciate your company this Thursday evening. There's so much to talk about. That 20% rate cut for pubs. Does that mean that they can finally get a bit of a breather? Also, we'll talk about the row between Reform UK and Labour MPs, now Immigration Minister. She says that Robert Jenrick, who was on the station this morning, indeed in the studio, should apologise because of an allegation he made about a clip. We'll talk about that, about what the new Immigration Minister may or may not have said. We'll talk too about the threat from Iran. It's a big threat. They threatened an RAF base in this country, so even though we're not involved in the Iran war, it is coming to our shores. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, you can send me a WhatsApp voice note, or you can give me a ring, all using the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 10 o'clock, so stay with us here on Talk. Chris has been in touch and says, evening Peter, why can't the government find a way of taxing all the offshore companies like Amazon, Starbucks? They pay nothing compared to British companies, says Chris. Mark wants to talk about Kemi Badenoch. If she could somehow find the money to abolish business rates, it should be a trivial matter for Burnham to find the cash to help pubs. So why is she complaining that Burnham hasn't said where he will get the money? She's not got a magic pot of gold. Whatever headroom is available to her is available to Burnham. And another texter says, I recently read that the Roman Empire collapsed because all the coin migrated east. I wonder if that is an omen for us in the West. After all, since Western manufacturing migrated east, the economies over there have boomed. One result is that China has sufficient funds to buy tremendous influence and does so. Before China's rise, would the UK Prime Minister have bent the knee to China over its demand to build a super embassy here? How will things be in 50 years? So all this talk about millionaires paying more tax is irrelevant. What we need is solid investment in manufacturing and in research and development, says Mark. So thanks for that. Big political row today between Reform UK and the government. The government appointed a woman called Jo White. She is the MP for Bassetlaw to Immigration Minister last night. Quick as a flash. In fact, we were reporting how Mike Tapp had been sacked and Jo White had been brought in as Immigration Minister. Quick as a flash, a tweet went up from Robert Jenrick, who's the Treasury spokesman for Reform UK. He alleged that Jo White had said that she didn't care if the boats were stopped. That's obviously a key part of immigration policy and something that she would now oversee as Immigration Minister. This is the clip that is causing the controversy. It's hard to work out exactly what she's saying, but she's very annoyed about it, demanding an apology, which Mr. Jenrick doesn't seem to want to give. Let's hear the clip.
I don't care who it's talking about. My priority. Yes, okay.
So she's demanding an apology. She said Robert Jenrick is spreading a false account of what I said at a meeting with my constituents last year. This recording proves what I said. Reform have deliberately twisted my words to mislead the public. They should withdraw their false claim and immediately apologise. The post is now deleted from Robert Jenrick, and within it he said Andy Burnham clearly doesn't give a stuff about stopping the boats, calling for a general election. Well, this morning Robert Jenrick was on the breakfast programme with Jeremy Kyle on this station. Jeremy put this to him, and this is what Mr. Jenrick said.
Right, Rob, people are saying that you doctored that so that you could just have her saying, I don't care, but in that you can hear a bit like Trump and the BBC that she said the opposite. What's your take? Help me out.
Well, it's very confused, to be perfectly honest. A group of locals who were at the meeting, or knew people who were at the meeting, sent me a recording, because my constituency is actually next to Joe's in North Nottinghamshire, and she appears to say with one breath that she wants to stop the boats, then with the next breath, I don't care about stopping the boats. So I made the, I thought, perfectly reasonable point of putting that out into the public domain and asking her to explain what is her actual position. Now, she says that the recording isn't quite right, and that if you have a better quality recording, she's saying something different. So look, I am a fair-minded person. I said late last night, you know what, I'll delete this. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt and let's see what she actually does.
Did you make a mistake in putting it out in the first place?
No, I don't think so. But look, I am prepared to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't know exactly what happened at this meeting because I wasn't there. It's obvious that recollections vary because...
God, you sound like the royal family. That's what the Queen said.
Some of the folks who were there left thinking that she was weak on this issue. She says that she wasn't. In fact, she's very tough. We'll have to see.
She published the full audio in which she said, I don't care who will stop the boats, but my number one priority is to stop those boats.
Well, let's see. Let's see.
Is it a let's see situation, Kevin? Kevin Schofield, the political editor of HuffPost UK, joins us. Is it let's see, or have we just seen?
Yeah, we have. I think what the key thing there, Peter, is when Robert Jenrick said it's quite a confused situation. So I would suggest if it's confused, don't put out a post on X suggesting that it's cut and dried.
He's also now deleted the post on X. So my question to Robert Jenrick would be, if it's a confused picture and if you stand by a version of what you said last night, why not keep the tweet up? Why delete it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an admission of guilt, really, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting that he did answer a question from Jeremy Kyle there. I this morning texted his spokesman to see if he was making a response, because obviously Joe White was very angry indeed about this, and I got no response at all. I mean, the thing is as well, I mean, Robert Jenrick says he's in the neighbouring constituency. Everyone knows where Joe White stands when it comes to immigration. She's the head of the Red Wall caucus of Labour MPs. They're not exactly known for being soft on immigration. Does it really pass the smell test that Joe White would say at a public meeting, I don't care if we stop the boats? I mean, she just wouldn't say that. Anyone who knows Joe White's politics and her approach to immigration and small boats would know that she would never say that. So I think at times, or always actually, you know, if there's any doubt, don't tweet. Just make sure before you put something out saying one thing is definitively true if there is some, as Robert Jenrick says, confusion over it. Now, it's a bit embarrassing for him, really, that he's had to delete it.
Do you think he'll end up apologising, Kevin? Do you think he'll end up apologising, or will this just go away? Will this row just go away?
I think it will just go away. I think if he was going to apologise, he'd have done it by now. He's had all day to apologise. I mean, he was quite defiant in that interview this morning, wasn't he? I think he thinks he's done enough by deleting it.
Okay.
He doesn't have to apologise.
Sure.
Or so he thinks. I think he should.
Okay.
But he thinks he shouldn't.
Let's talk as well about what the government is saying, specifically the Prime Minister on pubs. This was your exclusive a couple of days ago. You knew this was coming and reported it. Now the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has said the cavalry is on the way. Let's see what he said here.
This is a first step today, but it's an important step. I made this commitment in the Makerfield by-election because we're losing pubs. Pubs need to know that, you know, the cavalry is coming. You know, this is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. It could make the difference for a number of venues that are struggling, and it was right to confirm it quickly.
Kemi Badenoch was having none of it, though. The Conservative leader criticised the Prime Minister.
Last year, I announced Conservatives would abolish business rates. Abolish business rates for most of the high street, not just pubs, but shops, restaurants, retail, hospitality, leisure. And more importantly, I showed how I would pay for it. Our new Prime Minister only wants to cut business rates by 20%, and only for clubs, pubs and music venues. And he hasn't even found the money to pay for it.
Kemi Badenoch there speaking, saying that she really doesn't believe the case that the Prime Minister is putting forward. What do you make of this, Kevin? Sorry, we just can't hear Kevin at the moment. Are you on mute, Kevin? Oh, we've got you back. Kevin, we missed you there for a couple of seconds. Just start again, if you would.
Yeah, of course. He's obviously wanting to start, give the impression that he's hitting the ground running. There's been a bit of a policy blitz this week, hasn't there? This is the third big announcement that they've made. The other one's been VAT off electricity bills and a cap, or reinstating the Conservative government's cap, actually, £2 cap on bus fares. There's questions about where the money's coming from. It was a little bit vague, I have to say. He talked about maybe increasing business rates on vape shops, high street casinos potentially. So it's a little bit vague as to where the money's come from. Some hospitality and businesses not covered by this policy say, well, look, we would like it as well. Others say it's not enough. It's going to save about £1,100 a year. I did think it was significant, though, that he chose to go to Harlow in Essex. You know, that is reform country, really. He's talking there about working class culture. I think this is a...
Yeah, that was interesting, that he seems to talk about class far more than many others do. It is certainly something he's talked about quite a lot in the last few days.
Yeah, I think that is him trying to park his tanks on Reform UK lawn, to be honest with you. You know, as I say, it's in Essex, not that far away from the Clacton by-election. All these things, I think, have to be taken into consideration as well. I think Labour MPs who support Andy Burnham think he is the best hope they've got of taking on reform in those areas where maybe Keir Starmer had completely lost them, basically. So I thought that was quite interesting as well. But you know, there has to be a bit more meat on the bones. He's made a reasonable start, as I say, lots of activity, but I think the serious challenges for Andy Burnham still lie ahead.
Yes, and there is a big question about where all this money comes from and what he wants to do. Also, a bit of a row today. Lucy Powell, the new Education Secretary, opposing draconian spelling tests, as she puts them, for primary school pupils, arguing teachers should focus on creativity instead. She's criticised the ridiculous assessments, claiming, well, she previously, when she was a Labour backbencher, claiming they're used to micromanage children, suggesting secondary school pupils in England should not have to do the same handful of GCSEs, currently English language, maths and science, or risk failing because of a couple of things they spell incorrectly. What do you make of this and the reaction there has been to this?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, it was a bit of a surprise, I think, that Lucy Powell became Education Secretary. So people have been looking through old social media postings to find out what she said in the past about education. I think this will alarm quite a lot of parents. I think a lot of parents are quite happy for their kids to be held to high standards, that they quite want their kids to leave school being able to spell. Now, she's not said anything like this since she got the job. It was only a couple of days ago, of course. We await to see what her big idea for education is. Bridget Phillipson had the job, obviously, for the last couple of years. She was sacked as Education Secretary. What does Lucy Powell want to do? We really don't know. So these types of things that she said in the past give us an indication. And as I say, I think it might alarm some parents that it looks as though she may well be trying to water down some standards when it comes to fundamental issues like spelling. Maybe she'll involve Gemma Collins again, you never know. Speaking of celebrities, Gary Lineker has said that perhaps people should be taxed more, patriotic millionaires. Clearly the issue of tax is a very big one, and where the money's going to come from for all the things that we've been talking about this evening is a big point. When do you think there'll be a budget? Because with Starmer and Rachel Reeves, it took a long time for the budget to actually be held, and that led to a lot of speculation in the markets as well, which didn't help. So do you expect the budget to be held reasonably soon? What are your thoughts on an early election? Kevin, I'd love to hear your kind of looking into the sort of Schofield crystal ball on those two matters. Well, obviously, Parliament's in recess now, so we're not going to be back till September. Then they're only back for 2 weeks, then they're off again for party conference. So any budget really can't happen before October at the very earliest. So I wouldn't expect to see it before then. But interesting you should mention an early election, you know, speak to colleagues and MPs as well. There is a little bit of talk, and it's just idle speculation right now. Andy Burnham has not given any indication that he's ready to call a snap election. But October has been mentioned, maybe November, as a time when, you know, if the opinion polls, we've noticed the opinion polls, 2 or 3 in the last week have shown Labour on the up. If that trend continues, if reform continue to drift downwards, the Conservatives are still, although Kevin Badenoch's doing better, they're still not in the game, really. Maybe they're not ready for a general election. I can see why he may well be tempted. You know, the argument would be, I need to get my own mandate. I didn't stand on the last Labour manifesto. There's lots I want to do, so maybe I should go to the country, but it'd be a huge gamble because lots of Labour MPs would lose their seats.
Kevin, thank you. That's Kevin Schofield there, who is the political editor of the Huffington Post. Phil says Labour are crying about Jenrick's tweet. They took Farage's words out of context when they said he admired Putin, but they failed to state the full quote. They are hypocrites. Dee in Chesterfield says whether the new immigration minister said she didn't care about stopping the boats or not is irrelevant. In 2 years of Labour government, they have done nothing to stop the boats. We would all be forgiven for thinking that the government as a whole had no intention of addressing this shameful problem. The numbers have gone down, Dee, to some degree anyway. Mark says the first politician to say, sorry, I got it wrong, will go to heaven. It hasn't happened yet, but you never know. The population in hell, however, ... David in Worcestershire says, when I envisage the cavalry, it's men with swords and horses. This Burnham cavalry is more like a children's donkey ride at the seaside. Hopelessly pathetic. Help for the catering industry, says David in Worcestershire. Lots to discuss. We'll take some calls in just a minute, 0344 499 1000. But we did discuss the Clacton by-election briefly with Kevin, and here's a full list of your Clacton by-election candidates.
So the full list of candidates for the Clacton by-election: Joseph 77, the Independent; Adam Akatip, the Forward Party; Count Binface, the Count Binface Party; Nick the Incredible Flying Brick, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Tony Kane's an Independent; Woke Trump Kazi is an Independent; William Stewart James Clouston is the Social Democratic Party candidate; Rhys Cowan, an Independent; Glenn Charles Cummings, an Independent; Martin Davis, the Freedom Alliance Real People Real Alternative; Andy Earlam's an Independent; Nigel Farage, the Reform UK Party; Atiye Fards, an Independent; Lawrence Fox for the Reclaim Party; Tony Francis is an Independent; Robin Green, an Independent; Abby Hookway, an Independent; Howling Lord Hope, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Stephen Richard Ingram is an Independent, as is Amy Morris; Derek Norbert Morris is an Independent; Michael Noel O'Keefe, an Independent; Martin O'Brien, an Independent; Nick Pellis, an Independent; and Ketanar Kumar Pipiaya is the UK Voice Safer and Stronger UK Party; Daniel Pocock's an Independent; James Ransley, the Consensus Party candidate; Jerry Smith is an Independent; Kai Stevens for the British Democrats; John Stevens for Rejoin the EU; Baron von Thunderclap for the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Pamela Walford is an Independent; Marcus White, Everyone is God Party; and Mark Wilkinson for the Independents.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch. We will take some more calls, texts, tweets and voice notes in a minute or two. It's interesting what Gary Lineker has said, particularly about this wealth tax and the fact that there are So many people who are millionaires. There are apparently quite a few millionaires, actually. There are something like 1,800 of them. No. 2.4 million of them, 2.4 million of them apparently in the UK, and if one of them leaves, it's the same as 1,800 of the rest of us, sort of average taxpayers who would leave. So that's a big issue as well in all of that. Interesting what Kevin Schofield was saying too about Burnham and the early vibes really of what Burnham is saying. I wonder what you make of that, whether you think that he's made a good start as Prime Minister. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to give me your thoughts on all of that. Let's speak to Phil in Preston, who has some thoughts on the personal allowance as well. At the moment it is, I believe, £12,570, Phil. So what do you think it should be?
Well, if it went up to 20,000 and the people have more money in the pocket, then what would they do with that? They don't save it, they spend it.
I mean, that is one idea, but if you then say, well, none of that money, a quarter of that money or a third of that money or whatever is going to go to the Exchequer, that's going to be a massive fall in the tax take, isn't it, Phil?
No, not really.
I mean, it is, Phil. It is. If you're not going to tax, if you're not going to tax 7.5 grand of people's money, you're going to have less tax. You're going to have less in the coffers.
No, because people spend it. They'll spend it to get VAT on it and other things. It's not just the.
It's not going to be the same amount of money, though, is it, Phil?
No, they spend it on a restaurant or whatever. Want to buy something.
Okay.
And they get taxed on it. You know what I mean? And
you're still not going to have the same amount of money, Phil.
No, but the thing is, people have more money in their pocket and they're happier.
Well, that's true, but if you don't have enough to, run the country, if you don't have enough to pay for the hospitals and the schools and the roads,
you'll never have it. You'll never have enough to run the country with this lot in power, will you?
So, Phil, you'd be
most of it's bloody squandered anyway.
So, Phil, what do you think the level of taxation should be, the percent of tax over 20,000?
It should be 20% as it is now.
Okay. Well, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, it goes up to 40%, though. Should that still be there?
Yeah, it should, yeah. It's the lower end who need the money, not the people further up the ladder.
Okay.
It's us, pensioners and stuff. Like I well, if it goes up again, I'll be paying tax on my bloody pension.
Okay. Phil, listen, thanks for your message, or thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. That's Phil in Preston there. Kevin in Leicester has been in touch about Burnham. Kevin, what are your thoughts about the new Prime Minister?
Peter, great to speak to you, mate. I'm going to need your civil service head for this, because I'm not sure I've got this right, and I know you're quite smart with this, so I need to borrow you if you're
we'll see if I can be. I'm happy to be of assistance if I can, Kevin.
Okay, I'll try my best. Well, what it is, obviously, Labour are elected under Keir Starmer, and he's so he got elected on a manifesto. It's basically like me being their employer. People need to remember that we're the employer of the government, and it's like me employing John Labour over Trevor Tory because John Labour had a better CV.
Yeah.
Now he comes in, but then he says, actually, this CV is a load of crap. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to cut the winter fuel allowance. I'm going to do this. I'm going to raise taxes. I'm going to do whatever I like. But he has a mandate to do it because I gave him a job.
Yes.
Now he's gone. Obviously, Burnham hasn't got a mandate. Now, his arguing and his way of staying in power will be, I'm going to run the manifesto that Labour are elected on. So he's just basically running the party.
Yes.
But that, therefore, this is where I need your help. That therefore means he cannot raise taxes because it says in their manifesto we won't raise taxes, and he cannot borrow any money for things like paying the doctors, the nurses' wages, the NHS, paying the public sector. Is that right?
Not quite. You're almost right.
Educate me.
You're almost right. Okay, so the problem is, of course, as you understand, I'm sure, you can't say to John Labour, you've come in because your CV's better, now we're going to sack you right now because there isn't a general election. That's the only opportunity we get to get the government out. I'm sure you understand that. When it comes to borrowing, we could borrow more. It is possible for us to borrow more, but what Rachel Reeves said was that there were this set of ideas, these fiscal rules, And basically you say to the markets, to the people who lend you the money, you say, we're not going to borrow any more money because we can afford to pay back this level of money at this rate, therefore we're not going to borrow any more. If you borrow more, you've essentially gone back on your word, and the markets say, well, we can't trust you, we're going to charge you far more money to borrow. So he can borrow if he wants to, but it'll be bad because it'll cost more money to pay it back. So that's the first bit. With taxes, the Labour manifesto only says that they won't raise tax on three things: on national insurance, on VAT, and on, what's the third one? Help me. National insurance, VAT, and income tax.
Income tax.
Income tax. So that's 75% of all the tax the government takes. Now, some people would argue they've broken that already because they've put national insurance up for employers. But they did say they wouldn't put tax up on working people. Well, employers are working people too. They maybe aren't working class, but a lot of them, but they're working people. So there's about 25% of the tax take that they, in theory, could put taxes up on and still not break the manifesto. So they could look at things like capital gains tax, they could look at a wealth tax, as Gary Lineker has talked about, they could find other ways to tax things. They could, in theory, put a sales tax or other forms of tax on if they wanted to, although VAT exists. So there are taxes they can put up. However, what they could do, finally, is say, well, actually, the situation financially is far worse than we thought it was. We're actually going to go back in the manifesto, but we're giving you an opportunity to vote us out and call an early election. Does that explain things?
This is it. This is why, Peter, you're brilliant. I actually could have called Kev on this, but I specifically wanted to speak to you about it because I know this is your thing. But that actually is I pretty much had it right, and that is why they're fishing around with these weird taxes. That's how these little dodgy indirect ones, because you nailed it. Them three taxes, the income tax, and I knew they couldn't really put them up, but he has to give. I mean, I know everyone's like, oh, that we won an election or whatever, but he has to really, because Labour's policies or their way of thinking isn't really to grow and create with money. It's more taking from other people to pay down.
You're absolutely right, Kevin. And the key thing that, to go back to Trevor Tory and John Labour, I mean, John Labour, especially Andy Burnham, thinks that the state can solve the problem. So if you have a bigger public sector, so the whole economy that we have at the moment, nearly half of that, as Reem Abraham said earlier on the programme, 46% of all the economy is the public sector. I think that's too big. Trevor Tory would certainly say that's too big, although they did a lot to make the state bigger as well.
Yeah.
But the point as well is, if you want more money for public services, as you say, it can only come from taxing you more. It can come from borrowing, which we've already talked about, or it can come from taking money from other things. So essentially, a politician doesn't want to go to the country and say, what do you want less of? It's not going to say, right, well, you know that big bridge that we're going to build? We're not going to build it anymore because we need the money for defence, for example. So the money, they will say, has to come from somewhere. Radical people like Reem will say the state needs to be a lot smaller and do a lot fewer things, whereas I think people who are just going about their daily business are thinking, hold on a second, this is how much money I'm paid, and this is how much money comes into my account at the end of the month, because we've got the highest burden of taxation since the Second World War.
That's spot on. She was bang on, by the way. I actually live in Hinckley, the other guy's constituency. Right. I got his leaflet yesterday. He's in the bin. And she nailed that. And I don't want to rabbit on, but I had to go private for some healthcare treatment because I could not get an appointment because of who I am. And every point she made about the size of the government, and it just nailed it. And you're right. We've got to, rather than taking more from what we've got to create money to give out. I mean, it's got to be a balance. Surely even a left winger, if you're a leftist, you should see it both ways. It's good to pay tax, good to take tax off people for government and that. But at the same time, businesses need to grow and they need to breathe so if they can employ people and they can pay tax, and therefore you create real money. Real money comes from the private sector. That's what you need to encourage to grow an economy.
I think everything.
It has to work both ways.
I think everything you've said makes perfect sense, Kevin. And by the way, I hope you're feeling better soon. Not asking what your health issue is. I just hope you feel better soon and it gets sorted. That's Kevin in Leicester there. We'll take more calls in a minute or two. I'm also going to talk to Colonel James Sunderland, one of our defence analysts, about the fact that Iran has threatened to attack RAF Fairford, and the UK now says it's ready to defend itself after the Iranians said the bases are legitimate legitimate targets. Responding to the Iranian threat, a UK government spokesman said, "Our armed forces are ready to keep the United Kingdom safe from any kind of attacks, whether it's on our soil or from abroad. The UK stands ready 24/7 to defend itself. This includes through operating a layered approach to air and missile defence, provided by the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force assets equipped with a range of advanced capabilities, working closely with our NATO allies. The UK's approach to the conflict remains the same. We are committed to defending our people, our interests and our allies, acting in accordance with international law and not getting drawn into the wider conflict." We'll see what Colonel James Sunderland thinks of that. Also, Trump has bombed Iran from a UK airbase for the first time after Burnham allows those defensive strikes in reversal of the Starmer decision. Unsurprisingly, many are saying the two are linked. We'll see what James says in a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots to discuss this evening, and thank you for your calls, 0344 499 1000. We'll get back to more of those in a minute or two, but I want to talk about the threat from Iran to attack RAF Fairford. This is after Trump has bombed Iran from a UK airbase for the first time. Andy Burnham allowing defensive strikes in a reversal of Starmer's decision. The UK government, the MOD, has said that the armed forces are ready to keep the United Kingdom safe from any kind of attacks, whether it's on our soil or from abroad. Colonel James Sunderland is a former defence analyst, former senior member of the Army, of course, and a former Conservative MP for Bracknell as well. James, are we actually ready to keep the United Kingdom safe from any kind of attack should Iran attack? I mean, it's a long step to that, of course, and let's hope it doesn't happen. But we have this threat in regard to RAF Fairford. What do you make of it?
Well, Peter, interesting question, because, of course, we don't know how Iran might attack the UK, if at all. So I think it's unlikely that there will be an existential threat or attack. Iran doesn't have the capability to fly anything here, for example. But I think that increased activity in cyberspace is very likely. I think there is an increased likelihood of terrorist action, which is very worrying. And no doubt our security services are working very hard to spot and counter any effort in that vein. But quite clearly, there has been a change in policy. It's interesting that Andy Burnham's been the Prime Minister for barely 3 or 4 days, and already he's changed foreign policy to the point where UK is now allowing the US to take off from sovereign soil, UK soil, in order to mount what they call defensive attacks against Iran.
Why do you think Andy Burnham has done that? Especially when his Defence Secretary, or the previous Defence Secretary, is now the Chancellor. Is that an element you think may well be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, John Healey's a very well-respected Member of Parliament. He was a good Defence Secretary. I worked very closely with him when he was in opposition. I think that him becoming Chancellor is probably a good thing for the MOD. No doubt John Healey is advising the new Prime Minister on all sorts of issues, not just fiscal issues, defence issues as well. Wes Streeting is new to the job, so he'll take some time to get up to speed. But it's interesting, isn't it? I suspect that Andy Burnham wanted to mark a break between him and Starmer's foreign policy, particularly with regards to the White House. And no doubt Andy Burnham is a wily character. He will want to repair that relationship with Donald Trump.
Do you think it's a wise thing that he's done? Do you think it's a wise thing that it's done, or has it actually just put us at risk?
Well, it's an interesting question because it does clearly put us at risk. I mean, the Iranian reaction today is quite extraordinary. I mean, threatening the royal family and threatening, hell and fury against the UK. I think that Starmer's policy towards Iran was quite interesting. And if you think back to the original bombing, when the US flew all the way from US soil to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, it's very telling that that nothing used UK bases at the time. My instinct, although it wasn't public knowledge, my instinct was that Keir Starmer refused the Americans' permission to use British bases. And I think that Donald Trump wanted to prove that he could mount an attack anywhere in the world directly from US soil. But it is interesting. I think that diplomacy is at the heart of this. I think Burnham is very keen to rebuild relationship with a special relationship with the USA, and he's done that.
And with that in mind, and with that diplomacy in mind, you're right that Donald Trump was saying about mounting it from anywhere in the world. There are also lots of other air bases closer, actually, to Iran that they could use. So this is important, it's practical, it's a major issue, it's an issue of diplomacy as well. There is a heavy symbolism in it too. Given what Andy Burnham has been saying about other things, given how left-wing people think he is, given what he said about Gaza as well, for example, firmly opposing Israel, are you surprised that he's done this?
I am quite surprised, actually, and I think we need to analyse it a bit more. It's not immediately clear why he's done it. Clearly, permission has been granted. It's a complete change from Keir Starmer's position. But my instinct is that operationally, it's not an act of war. I mean, quite clearly, the Americans could fly to Iran from anywhere else. I note on the flight path that the B-1 bomber probably went via Gibraltar. It could equally go via Cyprus. Obviously, there are air-to-air refuelling assets in the region belonging to the USA. So there are many options open to the Americans for how they might bomb Iran, and they've been doing it for weeks and weeks without any recourse to the UK at all. So there is clearly a diplomatic reason why it's happened, and don't forget the air show at Fairford, Riyadh, was cancelled earlier this year because of what the Americans have at Fairford. It's clearly very, very conscious that the equipment is there. They've got B-1 bombers there. They're very worried about national security. They're very worried about security of the base, hence why the air show was cancelled. But I think this is quite telling, and it may well be that we are entering into a renewed era of positivity when it comes to the special relationship.
And just when it comes into that renewed era, I mean, even already we have a very strong threat from Iran anyway. I just wonder, in your estimation as an analyst, whether you think the UK public really gets that, whether in fact the government gets that, whether Andy Burnham gets that, when there have been all these attempted attacks, whether they're cyber, whether they're attacking the journalist who was stabbed on behalf of Iran, for example, just over a year ago, whether there is a real cognizance in the public's mind that Iran hates us and wants to destroy our way of life. The Iranian regime, I should say, rather than the very many people who are exiles from Iran living in this country, who, of course, we support.
Yeah, I mean, no question at all that Iran does pose a legitimate threat to the UK and the people of the UK. We know of many foiled terrorist attempts. We know that the Iranians have operatives all across the UK. We know they're watching us very closely. We're being attacked in cyberspace daily. So the Iranians are trying to disrupt how we do our business. And quite clearly, the British government recently prescribing the IRGC is yet another nail in the coffin for that relationship. There is no question at all that Iran is very angry with the UK. There's no question at all that the decision taken by Andy Burnham puts us back in the sights. But I've no doubt at all that the security services are ready. I've no doubt at all that that we know roughly who people are, where they're operating, what the threat might be. And while we'll never know about it in terms of the public domain, I'm pretty confident that our security services are pretty good at what they do, as well as the blue light services, as well as the police, and of course our existential forces. So we have very, very potent armed forces, and should there be any kind of threat from Iran, we'll be ready.
How much of a change in the diplomatic relationship, not just with America but with Iran, do you think the effect will be of the fact that the IRGC are now finally prescribed? The Muslim Brotherhood are not, but the IRGC are.
Another tough question to answer. I mean, I think ultimately it just shows that the regime is a prior regime. By now formally prescribing the IRGC, they're now recognised as effectively a terrorist organisation. So we can't do business with them. Diplomatic relationships with Iran is not going to be strong anyway, and it's been very poor for a long period of time. There's a deep-seated grievance, of course, between Iran and the UK. Iran blames the UK for all sorts of things over the years, and that grievance won't go away now. If anything, the grievance is going to be exacerbated. But I think we need to wait and see how this plays out. Right now, Iran is very engaged in war. Iran is very concerned about the Americans. They've lost their infrastructure, they've lost their armed forces. They're in no position at all to fight back. But there'll be a festering sore there, I suspect, that will continue for many years to come.
James, always worth listening to your wisdom. Appreciate that. That is Colonel James Sunderland there, former Conservative MP for Bracknell, and of course was a colonel in the British Army. So thank you to him. What do you make of what he says and the threat from Iran? How worried are you about it? How worried should we be? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Take some more calls after the break. We'll also find out what's on Ash and Andre's programme too. Gary's been in touch and says when Gary Lineker bought his luxury villa in Barbados, he did it through a company that he set up in the British Virgin Islands, which meant that the company and not an individual was buying the property. It avoided a chunk of stamp duty that would otherwise have been payable. Ironically, this was the same trick that the Labour Party itself used in 2006 when selling its old Westminster headquarters, wrapping the ownership of the property inside a specially created company, and therefore saving the buyer £210 in stamp duty, which of course meant that the buyer could pay the seller, the Labour Party, a higher price. For Lineker and Labour to now talk about everybody paying their fair share of tax is the height of hypocrisy, because they have both been involved in aggressive tax avoidance in the past, thinks Gary. Mark says they don't start school until they're 7 in some countries. The level of educational attainment is often superior. Our obsession with early years development is horribly philistinic. Worse, it calculates neurosis in kids. Phil says, I and possibly a lot more people who thought something of Labour many years ago could have got people's attention if he'd looked at doing something which is at the forefront of people's concerns. Should have given some indication on what he intends to do on illegal immigration and crime, not bus fares and minor refund on electricity VAT, says Phil. We still haven't heard the word immigration. It is day 4. We have not heard the word immigration from the lips of Andy Burnham. That is a word we have not heard. Steve has been in touch as well. Last one before the break, and as I say, we will take some calls after the break, so do get your call in if you want to, 0344 499 1000. Steve says, listening avidly to your programme as usual. Thank you, Steve, that's very kind. Regarding business rate cuts, I own a 100-year-old licensed cafe bistro in Dorset. The last year was the first time that it ran at a heavy loss due to the continuing costs inflicted on the restaurant industry. We usually employ 8 university students in the summer. We cannot afford it this year due to minimum wage increases and national insurance contributions. Our electric bill per month is now in excess of £3,000. 3 years ago, it was a third of that. Business rates are £11,000 a year. Stock prices are up, sales are 20% down year on year. But all we ever hear about is pubs and clubs. People have to eat as well as drink. We left West London last year after 50 years to semi-retire and have a better quality of life. Life is far more pleasurable in Dorset, but we can't afford another year in loss. We invested all our money in this venture that seemed to be able to sustain us modestly, but Labour have now made that harder. It's all just looking hopeless now, says Steve. Steve, I'm really sorry that that is the case. He's also very kindly invited me for a Diet Coke at his cafe bistro and given me the name of it, which I'm not going to read out, but because he's asked me not to. But Steve, that's very, very kind of you, and hopefully if I'm in Dorset sometime, I will do that. It sounds just, I mean, Steve has just painted a really, really good picture, very, very simply and straightforwardly, about the kind of incomings and outgoings that he is facing as a small business. There's 8 university students who won't have a job. We're talking about the chief executive of McDonald's, for example, said that her kids, or his kids, I'm not quite sure, will have to get a summer job. But are the summer jobs actually there? Are we in a situation where we can teach people the value of work, or are we pricing them out? Because people like Steve want to give those jobs, want to pay those university students, want to have the extra business that comes in the summer, but it's just not going to happen because of the situation in which they find themselves. Lots to discuss, of course, in the final bit of the programme. Please do give me a ring, get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
A 78-year-old Anne Widdecombe was bashed on the head repeatedly with a hammer until she died. Palestine Action is advertising direct action training using hammers.
And I'm sorry, but this is what happens when you import not just sort of, frankly, foreign or very un-British sort of cultural issues like Palestine, but when you actually tolerate the behaviour as well. Everybody knows that struggle is typified by brutal violence. We don't want that here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Becca says Iran doesn't need missiles. We've opened the borders to invaders already. Trevor says if they increase the tax threshold to £15,000, I think it would help people back to work and solve the pensioner poverty issues in the future. Good show, mate, says Trevor. Mark says Burnham seems to be capable of robust decision making. I wonder if we finally have a capable Prime Minister. Ernie says, hi Peter, if Iran attacks us, we're a member of NATO, and an attack on one is an attack on all member countries. So will every NATO country then attack Iran? We will see. Ernie, let's hope we don't get to that level of things. Leslie says, seeing as 160 plus migrants arrived today, when will Burnham address the country on immigration? Leslie, we still haven't heard that word from his lips, immigration. Another person says, set the private sector free and there will be many more job opportunities, and that all by itself will not only shrink the welfare bill but the public sector. It will shrink the public sector because there won't be the need for the government to create employment. Leslie says, if Burnham doesn't tax the rich, will Lineker still hand over extra tax to help Burnham? And David in Worcestershire says, after explaining the manifesto to your caller, it now makes sense. Gary Lineker, Burnham's mate, is ruling the pitch for a wealth tax because most other taxes are ruled out in the manifesto. Wealth tax incoming, and Lineker will be opening an account in the Cayman Islands, predicts David. So thank you for that. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I love talking about politics. I love explaining politics to people, and I love making stuff clear for people. It's a real passion of mine, and I'm a total political nerd, but there's no point being a political nerd if you can't say to people who aren't political nerds, actually, what does this all mean? And I love calls like that. I love being asked my opinion. Who doesn't like being asked their opinion? Let's get another opinion from Stephen in London on government spending. Stephen, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Regarding government spending. The trouble with it is that it's no way of knowing whether it's economically efficient. So, for instance, if a private company builds a road for, say, 25 million, they'll then charge people to use the road. Then you're getting feedback about whether that expenditure is justified. Does the expenditure, the revenue from people paying to use a road, does that justify the 25 million?
Mm-hmm.
But when a government builds a road, because the road can be used for free, there's no economic feedback about whether that 25 million was justifiable economically.
That's a very fair point, actually. What do you make of what Burnham wants to do with reducing taxes for pubs anyway? Do you think taxes will have to increase for other people, Steve?
Well, any reduction in taxes is good, but if you're going to keep spending the same amount, then you have to fund that less of taxes in other ways, as you've talked about, spending or taxing in other ways.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Stephen, thank you. That's Stephen in London there. Appreciate that. Lenny is in Ashford and has some thoughts on spelling and kids in school. It's interesting, before we go to Lenny, actually, Nat in Tel Aviv has said Russians start school at 7. 5 sounds frightening to us. Lenny, you're very welcome to the programme. At what stage do you think kids should start school?
My contribution was going to be that not everybody are academic,
yeah,
but still have a successful life.
Of course, yeah.
And I was in business for 50 years, and I've had a very successful life, a good standard of living all my life.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I was taught when I was at school, the one thing that I had going for me was common sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wonder, Lenny, on this it's a big issue, isn't it, about what qualifications people need and what they should have. I mean, most jobs you can't get without an English and Maths GCSE. We've got the Education Secretary saying prior to today, not since she's been Education Secretary, but saying that actually spelling tests are too much and we shouldn't necessarily teach kids to spell. What do you think of that?
Well, I wished I was more academic, and I would have achieved a lot more than what I did if I did have academic skills. And I can understand it, going to work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I realised I wasn't any good to anyone else because of my academic skills, so I worked for myself.
What did you do, Lenny? What was your job?
I started off many businesses,
mm-hmm.
but from the time I left school. But I ended up accidentally the largest second-hand van dealer in Kent.
Right.
And I created a 4-acre industrial estate, specially for small businesses.
I mean, that sounds like a big achievement to me. And whether you can spell industrial estate or not doesn't matter to me, because you're creating jobs, employment opportunities for various people to make money, and that's important too. The whole way we evaluate people needs to change. But I mean, I still think, I'm afraid, that a basic level of certainly English and Maths. I'm not sure about science. I'm not sure about French and other things, but I do think a basic level of English and Maths is a good idea when it comes to...
I totally agree with you.
Okay.
But I agree with what you're saying, Peter, but there are cases where you can't make a silk purse out of a pig's ear.
Yeah.
And you have to do the best you can with the ability that you've got.
Well, that is a very good lesson for us all. Thank you, Lenny. I really appreciate that. That was Lenny in Ashford there. What do you think about this? It's a very, very interesting point about sort of the value of education and what education should be and what is an education in itself. Ken's in London and joins me now. Ken, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter. Yeah, this is a talk of another threat from Iran to the UK. However, the greatest danger in Europe, UK, America, Australia and Canada is the Trojan horse of present-day living Muslims in the nations. There has been a tremendous rise in Muslim immigrants, especially illegal immigrants. Most of the illegal immigrants who come here are fighting-age young men, great danger to the nation. And Islam is Islam. Did you know there's over 4 million Muslims now in this country? I believe it's a Trojan horse.
Okay, I completely disagree with you, Ken, on the fact that just because someone's a Muslim it makes them a threat.
So you're going to cut me off now?
No, I'm not. I'm going to talk to Ash in a second, but perhaps we can have a longer conversation about it on another occasion.
Bye-bye.
OK, cheerio, Ken. Thank you for that. Craig, very briefly in Yorkshire. Craig, on taxes, just briefly, cause while Ash gets his gets sorted out, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi Peter. Good evening. I think one thing that should be considered by Mr. Burnham or any other, future government would be the introduction of joint assessment for couples, be that they be married or in a civil partnership, so that you have a fully transferable tax allowance, or you could be assessed on one income in a household that would allow for parent to stay at home and look after
Where would
children.
you draw? I think that's a really good idea, Craig. I just wonder where you would draw the line. I mean, if people have, there are loads of people who aren't married. There are loads of people who maybe live together for 10 years, maybe have a couple of kids who aren't married. If you're essentially a family unit, would you then say that could you would transfer tax allowances like married couples, or?
I would say yes. I don't have any objection to that. That's a way that a lot of people live in a modern society.
Okay.
I think that will be fine. Yeah, I think it's something that should be encouraged. Thank you very much.
Craig, thanks for your call, and I will talk to Ken a bit on a longer occasion soon, but I want to talk to Ash now about what's coming up on the show. Hello, sir.
Hi, man. How's the show, man? Is it good?
It's been really good, actually. It's been a really interesting programme. Lots around today.
Well, there is. On our show today, we've got Luke Murphy. Luke calls in sometimes. He's an entrepreneur and he's got Parkinson's disease, and he recently had some sort of implant, and he presses the button and it's really good, so it's really helping him along.
Does it stop him, the symptoms?
Well, he can walk around a bit. We'll find out. I mean, it's obviously not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Because I remember seeing one of those from Michael J. Fox where he was visibly shaking, turns it on, and it just stops, which is fantastic.
So maybe we'll find out. I mean, because he's new to it, but so we'll see what's going on there. We've got Richard Donaldson, founder of the Great British National Strike. He was on as a guest, and he's talking about the general stuff, about Iran. It's all kicking off again, Peter.
Yeah, it is. They want
You're going to get called up, because you're a bit younger than the rest of us.
If I get called up, I'm afraid it's curtains for the UK, because
Iran. Be scared, Iran. Be very, very scared. Cardi P's on his way.
I don't think too many Iranian mullahs or ayatollahs are scared of me. Somehow.
They will be quaking. They just don't believe it will happen, but you wait and see. He'll be on his way. Pete Barnes, another Pete, another dangerous Pete. We'll be sending over there. Political strategist. He'll be on from 11, going through all the papers. He's a very clever man. And then Ask Ash. I've got my own sort of advice show. I do all things medical, cooking, DIY, holiday advice. Obviously,